What is going on, YouTube? Welcome to the Viper versus VortiX. This is day number 5 of the Swiss stage of the $100,000 N4C tournament main event. Now, you might be looking at the overlay and asking, how is it possible that you're not seeing the fancy overlay? How is it possible that I'm not casting from the live feed? And well, let me tell you a story. So this morning, when the set began, this was the first set of the day, I opened up all the software I needed to cast the set, and as you know, I'm receiving a clean feed, which is basically like a live stream. It also means that if I forget to record anything, then I'm not going to be able to recover the live feed. And guess what? After casting the first game, I noticed that I didn't start the recording. So after game number 1, I have everything set up and all the overlays are working, and I'm basically casting this game after I finished casting this set. This obviously means that I sort of know the result of this one, and I do apologize for that. Obviously, I won't spoil anything for this one, for this game, and I do apologize for the fact that you're seeing this overlay instead of the regular one. I was just an absolute potato this morning and I forgot to press the record button. So game number 1 will be on this overlay and I'm casting it from a recorded game. Game number 2 and everything on from that point is going to be with the regular setup that you have seen before. With that being said, we're jumping onto the Arabia game here. Left side is going to be Viper playing as the Abbasids in blue, and on the right side it is going to be VortiX playing in the red color. So this is the final day of the N4C main event, the Swiss stage, and Viper is currently at the last spot, which means that he has no chance of qualifying for the playoffs. So playing this set, he's basically playing for pride, because really, there is no way for him to make it to the playoffs. Whereas for VortiX, the stakes are not so high either. He's basically fighting for a seeding position, which means that the outcome of this set will only determine one thing, and that will be basically who VortiX will face in the playoffs. Now, I think that the identity of the opponent will also be affected by their sets, so VortiX won't just be able to sort of adjust his gameplay and, let's say, intentionally throw away the set to get a weaker opponent or something like that. So let's make that clear. Even if he had the opportunity, I wouldn't expect him to do anything like that, but the other sets will also impact who is going to be the opponent of VortiX in the playoffs. So VortiX has basically no major intention to throw this set away. That's the thing I wanted to say. The fact that I'm also watching this from a recorded game means that I'm finally controlling the camera, which feels so weird because I casted the last 6 days or so without me controlling the camera. So let's take a look at this game here. On the right side, we have VortiX with the town center on the gold and the wood line. This means that he doesn't have to make a gur here, and his Ovu is going to be quite a bit exposed here. That's definitely not ideal against the Abbasids. He's dropping the deer stones as we speak, and on the other side, you're going to have a lumber camp being placed by Viper. He is dropping a mill, which means that he had to start with straggler trees. You can see the signs of that. He has taken some wood from the straggler tree, and he's just now able to afford a lumber camp. Meanwhile, he's mining gold, which is a quite exposed gold mine over here for himself. That's going to be a little problematic to handle in the long run. Economy wing is coming in right now for the Viper. Of course, he's going to gather enough gold for a fresh foodstuffs upgrade, and then he's going to pull his villagers off from gold in all certainty. If he wants to go for additional town centers, one of the things that he will have to note is that his stone mines are quite exposed. In fact, look at this mineral deposit over here. 2 stone mines, 2 gold mines. This is a gem because if you can protect this, you basically have enough resource income from minerals, stone and gold, for a long time. But should you lose this, you're going to be in serious trouble, because of course it's going to be very difficult to get any access to gold or stone. There's a backup stone here at the back, so that's going to work out well for Viper, but no real backup gold mine. This one is his only reasonable backup, other than these. And this is going to be tough to access if he's getting a lot of pressure from VortiX. Speaking of VortiX, he did not do any Dark Age aggression, no barracks right next to that Ovu. He's just slowly crawling up to that Feudal Age. He isn't even rushing it. He has been building the deer stones with 3 villagers for the time being. In the meantime, you will have VortiX harassing those stone miners with a con. He won't really be able to do that much damage over here because, of course, Viper will just pull away the villager from the stone that's damaged. But even just the fact that Viper has to pull away the villager and send a new one is something that will delay the second town center a tiny bit. And that's the name of the game here for the Mongols. You just want to make sure that you delay that second town center as long as possible. Khan still active around that stone mine, still no signs of aggression here for our red player VortiX. And it looks like Viper does have a scout overlooking the base of VortiX. It's being trailed by quite a lot of sheep. Of course, for now, Viper doesn't need the sheep because he's taking the berries, and we're seeing a stable being dropped by Viper as we speak. On the right side, still no signs of aggression by VortiX, and it seems like he just wants to go for fast castle. If you look at his resource bank, he already has quite a lot of gold in the bank, and he's piling up a lot of food, dropping multiple pastures. When you're underinvesting, or well, not really underinvesting, but when you're investing so limited amount of resources into your army, it's oftentimes just a fast castle from the Mongols because they do have a very efficient economy, and because you're not even making any units from your stone either, you're going to have a ton of stone to work with when you get to Castle Age, so you can easily afford double training a lot of Lancers and Men-at-Arms. Viper once again gets pushed away from the stone. He's getting close to be able to drop that second town center. He's already got the wood for this. The sheep will be detached from the back of the scout of Viper. He's going to pursue that Khan for the time being. And on the other side, VortiX indeed is just working towards Castle Age as fast as possible. Viper has a stable already, but of course it's going to be very difficult for him to do any damage at the base of VortiX, because VortiX has a very compact economy. Viper dropping the second town center up front. This is a good TC spot. Obviously, he wants to make sure he's able to protect the gold mine and potentially even the stone mine. But the key thing is that he's going to have a foothold in his region, and this is going to secure these minerals for himself for the time being. VortiX getting close to Castle Age over here. 800 food in the bank, 500 gold as well. And sometimes, I have to say, it's very weird to be spectating myself after multiple days of watching the game with a spectator, because I was just looking at a scene over there and I was like, come on, spectator, move the camera. And I'm just now realizing that I'm my own spectator. So this definitely has its pros and cons. I've gotten used to, you know, just the convenient setup of me just sitting back and talking instead of actually doing the observing myself as well. This being said, let's take a look at the villager counts, and since we don't have the fancy overlay, we'll have to manually do that. 28 to 26, minimal difference in the villager count between the two players, as on the right side, Viper is going to face a Mongol player dropping the step redoubt. It's being built by 12 villagers, so quite a heavy commitment as well from VortiX. He wants to rush that up as soon as possible, even sends a 13th villager just to have a lucky number on it, building that step redoubt, and it's going to be a fast market coming in. That's a little surprising from VortiX. Does he have an unbalanced eco? The answer is no. He might have a low amount of food, I can imagine that, or he might want to buy wood. That's the alternative solution. I think that's the plan. He's dropping a stable right now, but he might need some more wood so that he can drop additional production buildings, and he might want to buy that because he doesn't really have a lot of wood in the bank. We'll have to see what he does with that market. I will just keep it over here to see what kind of transactions he's going to make. But I'm curious why he's rushing up a market like that. It's not something that's commonly done, especially for a player that has a limited amount of resources to work with. Looks like nothing is happening on it just yet, but he's got a ton of gold. Obviously, when you have a step redoubt boosting your gold income, you can justify sending a lot of villagers on gold and just buying the resources. If you think about that, you don't have any gathering bonus for wood or food, but one thing that you can do is use your gold gathering bonus and then convert that gold into wood and food. That's an option. Looks like he's not really making any transactions right now. Meanwhile, the stable is popping out the first two Lancers as we speak. Viper, on the other hand, is ready to go up to Castle Age. He's dropping double barracks, and he's probably going up with the Culture Ring. Indeed, that's the case. Once he gets up to Castle Age, he's going to get the Preservation of Knowledge upgrade. For now, villager counts are 37 to 31, so Viper has a tiny bit of a lead here, but Viper also went for that semi-fast castle approach over here. He's understanding that he can't really afford to fall back that much compared to VortiX, because should that happen, it is going to be a quite significant disaster, I would say, for Viper, because he could easily find himself being overrun by Lancers and Men-at-Arms. Speaking of Lancers, Viper's got some spears going. These are just standard Dark Age Spearmen, hardened upgrade coming in as we speak. It looks like we're going to have a defensive tower over here for Viper. This is going to be a key defensive tower. He needs to protect these berries. Lancers are closing the distance. You do have two spearmen over here that are just slightly mispositioned, but the tower goes up. This fight is not something that Viper really wants to take, because those Castle Age Lancers can easily deal with the Dark Age Spearmen. But it looks like he's going to take the fight nonetheless. He's got the hardened upgrade now, and he's going to damage some of those Lancers, but he's going to lose 2 out of the 3 spearmen, having 1 heavily damaged. Con goes down here for VortiX. That's definitely painful. He ran into the town center fire of 2 town centers, so he's going to be without the con for some time. Some more Lancers are moving in, trying to hit the gold miners. Viper has to jump into the town center, and that he does not do. That's going to be one villager taken down. A second one could be killed here quite easily. Looks like Viper is going to get away with this, just losing one villager. 43 villagers compared to 35, so Viper's villager lead is steadily increasing. As the culture wing is about to be finished, he's gonna have a blacksmith in a matter of seconds. Double barracks, one stable for him, whereas on the other side, it's only one stable for VortiX, dropping the prayer tent as we speak. He's going to play 2 town centers, aha! So VortiX is going to have 2 TCs, which means that he won't fall behind in terms of villager count. Now, one of the things that VortiX doesn't really have is military production, so he has to be careful about this one, especially now that that spearman just braced against the knights and stunned them for some time. Those knights are still standing strong, but they're quite heavily damaged, so for now VortiX will have to disengage. And VortiX will try to start picking up relics over here, just now dropping a siege workshop. But one thing that he doesn't have, as I said, is military production. He basically didn't even spend his stone on military. He's trickling in some Lancers with double training, but really, he's just sort of poking and probing Viper's eco, seeing what Viper is up to. Viper has dropped the mosque and he's coming in on Imam right now. Villager count currently 50 to 41. VortiX, of course, won't fall any more behind because he has the second town center going as well. He's got the step readout working, which is going to boost his gold mining. He's got the market to balance out his eco, but he really doesn't need to. Viper is sitting on a ton of resources on the other hand, and I wonder what exactly he's up to. For now, it's just spearmen, and there is no response to that from VortiX, so this is going to work out so far for Viper, simply because VortiX shows no signs of adding anything that deals with spearmen so far. Knights looping around here trying to hit the berries. This is something that Viper is expecting, and he's getting ready with the spearman. He could have hidden them in the stealth forest and just surprised VortiX here, but instead he's going to jump into the tower. The spearmen do brace for impact, and they do stun one of the Lancers. The second Lancer also gets a hit on it, and in the end, the Lancers will get forced back. Viper was able to pick off one of those Lancers. That's good value over here, as he's escorting that Imam with a couple of spears. Meanwhile, on the other side, still 2 town centers working for VortiX. He now has 2 archer ranges and he's making crossbows. He's expecting men-at-arms from the opponent. Volo being popped over here by the Viper, trying to intercept those knights. The knights are trying to run away, and that is going to be a conversion successful. Big move. Huge move here from Viper, because now he was able to yoink 4 Lancers from the opponent. VortiX seemed like he didn't notice the Vololo, and he just tried to run outside the circle. If he turns back and kills the monk, he could have done that, because 4 knights are enough to kill the monk really fast. But he didn't seem to notice that, and now he has just donated 4 Lancers to the Viper. Now Viper is going to bump into a bunch of crossbows over here. 1 Lancer goes down, second Lancer getting taken down as well. The third Lancer could be taken down as well by the next volley, and indeed it gets taken down. So ultimately, this will feel like as if VortiX just got those Lancers killed, because Viper did lose most of them immediately. Viper wasn't really able to use them for much. But still, that was a successful Vololo here for Viper, something that we haven't seen for a long time. Viper is still mining stone, so in theory a third town center is not impossible. In fact, that is exactly what's happening. Third town center being placed right now by Viper. That's going to widen the villager gap between the 2 players. Currently 54 for VortiX, 65 for Viper. We do have some more crossbows now being added by VortiX. First mangonel being added by our Mongol player. He's bringing back relic number 2 right now. Keep in mind, both the Abbasids and the Mongols are able to build siege weapons on the battlefield, so whoever's gonna have a more deadly combination of actual human power, like talk about spearmen, talk about crossbowmen, talk about archers, potentially cavalry, and of course siege, including mangonels against the human power of the enemy and springolds against the opponent's siege, is probably going to win this battle. So this is a very delicate balance. You need to make sure that your balance is right. You have too many mangonels, too little springolds, your opponent will just snipe your mangonels with their own springolds. Too many springolds, too little mangonels, you will be overrun by infantry. So You have to be very careful when it comes to balancing this unit composition. Sacred Site in the middle being captured right now by VortiX. ViPer could send something to deal with this one, but so far he hasn't done that. And it looks like we're going to see an Imam capturing the Sacred Site at the bottom by ViPer. Up north he also captured this one, so both players are being pretty active capturing Sacred Site. ViPer has gotten 2 relics for himself, and for VortiX he's got 3, so VortiX has the relic lead for the time being. ViPer with 40 military though, against 26 from VortiX. The numbers advantage is slowly growing over here, and you see 76 villagers versus 61. ViPer has the villager lead now by a quite significant margin, and he's got the army lead as well. He's pushing up with the spearmen. Here come the crossbows too. There's only 1 mangonel for ViPer, supported by what seems to be 1.5 springolds. This one was never actually finished. On the other side, the Khan once again gets picked off from VortiX. Looks like a sloppy start for him. Not exactly sure what happened to that Khan, but he just let himself get slaughtered by the spearmen. Other side, looks like VortiX is playing full crossbowmen. I think VortiX is still expecting men-at-arms from ViPer, because the only reason that he would play crossbowmen is if he's expecting men-at-arms, which is the obvious unit choice from the Abbasid dynasty. But reality is that spearman works just as fine here for ViPer, especially if ViPer knows that his opponent has a lot of crossbows. Spearman is a much better choice than men-at-arms are. Looks like the Shaman is going to get picked off over here, so ViPer has 2 sacred sites now, and he could technically capture the 3rd one, as he's now moving in trying to probe the base of the opponent. The production here for VortiX is quite exposed, so he might be forced to take a fight prematurely, simply because he needs to keep his production alive. Looking at his stone count, he's got some stone in the bank, so you could think about some more double production here. For now, he's single training crossbows exclusively. No cavalry, no archers, just crossbows. He's got 3 springolds as opposed to Vipers too. This is going to be a big fight unfolding over here, as we have the springolds for VortiX crawling up. They do deliver a volley on the springold of ViPer. It's a 1-for-1 trade between the springolds. ViPer is going to lose his 2nd springold though, and now he's outnumbered in terms of springolds. Looks like he's pulling back the mangonels, trying to drop a castle in the middle. He set the fire on the Ovu, but now he's going to be pushed back for the time being. ViPer's gonna have to rebuild his springold numbers here, and that is exactly what he's doing right now. That is going to be springboard number 1, 2, 3, 4 being dropped. And of course, having a castle in the middle as well is going to mean that this is going to be a great staging ground for an assault. VortiX still adding some more springolds himself, but the concerning thing is that he doesn't have anything against the spears. He's got the crossbows, sure thing, but if he had like 5 or 6 archers even, that would help immensely against those spears. Springold is rolling up for ViPer right now. He wants to push the opponent's base to give himself a window to get that keep up. Springold is now opening up against the buildings, and it looks like VortiX is just waiting. He's realizing that he's got 3 springolds as opposed to 5, 6, 7 from ViPer, I believe. Indeed, ViPer's got 6 springolds, 2 mangonels also crawling up, and now the production from our Mongol player is quite heavily exposed. The stable is being lit on fire, and as things stand, VortiX is trying to get some more springolds on the battlefield because he knows that he cannot win a battle where the opponent has more springolds. Looks like the blacksmith is trying to get away here. The next volley from the springolds finishes it off, and with that, no more blacksmith upgrades for some time for VortiX. His base is wide open for this push, and here comes the potential battle. VortiX still trying to buy himself some time to get some more springolds on the battlefield. The prayer tent is now going to be lit on fire, probably getting rid of the relics in the possession of VortiX. VortiX now crawling up with his springolds, ViPer pulling back his own forces. And it looks like the infantry will jump on the springolds here. This is a great opportunity for ViPer. He gets 2 springolds down of the opponent, takes down the 3rd one. He's going to trade springolds with the opponent here, but guess what? All the springolds are going down here from VortiX, which means that ViPer can now push up and try to push the mangonels. Still, large amount of crossbows over here for VortiX. He still has 2 mangonels alive. Infantry getting closer and closer to take down those mangonels. ViPer springolds get rid of 1, and the 2nd mangonel could also be exposed to the springold fire. ViPer is getting closer and closer to pushing that town center. VortiX's forces are still standing strong, but you get the feel that this is getting more and more concerning. He's losing that town center, and there's a 2nd castle being placed in his face. Some of the crossbows are heavily damaged as well. There is 1 springold right now coming in for VortiX. He's got a 2nd one in construction, and the villagers are being pulled here. They will try to stop this castle. The mangonels will set up over here for ViPer. He's got a defensive tower as well. Crossbows in here. Castle being built right now, and it looks like VortiX is ready to stop this castle. Mangonels are setting up, unleashing a volley on the crossbows, and the crossbows are getting wiped out. That is a big battle here, and so far the Mangonels are delivering the punishment. The next volley is coming out, targeting the man-at-arms. Crossbows falling left and right thanks to the Mangonels. The villagers will take down one Mangonel, the second Mangonel, however, getting another volley out, and ultimately resulting in all of those crossbows getting wiped out. Barely any forces remain over here for VortiX, and he wasn't really able to stop this castle. Viper still has the villagers around, and VortiX taps out of the game, and with that, VortiX is now falling behind 1-0 compared to Viper. Welcome back to VortiX versus the Viper here. It is game number 2 in this best of 5 between these two players, and we're going to the first home map of VortiX, which is Hill and Dale, and it seems like we are going to have a Chinese mirror coming up here. Surprising mind games coming in, because this map is usually an HRE map. Of course, sometimes you see Delhi being picked as a counter pick to the HRE. We have seen some Mongols being utilized recently, but of course Mongols is gone based on game number 1 for at least VortiX, and Viper wants to play with Chinese here. And with that, that's going to be an intriguing matchup, because I'm not even sure when was the last time I saw a Chinese mirror matchup on this map. It's actually one of my favorite mirrors, because both of the civilizations, well, just the Chinese of course, but both of the players are having a civilization that's heavily flexible, and because of that, there is many ways that you can play Chinese. So, while this mirror matchup is in theory, as we discussed the mirror, in reality, the deviations in the unit compositions could be quite massive. Looks like Viper is quite successful gathering some sheep for himself, whereas for VortiX he struggled to find a lot of herdables at the beginning, which means that the start is a lot better over here for Viper. Given the fact that the players usually open up with a mill on their hunt and they supervise that, the sheep isn't going to be a significant factor at the beginning, but of course Viper is going to have some extra to work with, which is always a nice thing. So, when it comes to playing the Chinese, especially on this map, it's going to come down to basically your free components and shuffling their order. 2 town centers, Song Dynasty, Castle Age. I will think that on this map, you will try to get a fast Song Dynasty out there, but then the question becomes, are you going to try to put up some aggression at the beginning, try to surprise your opponent, or do you just go for the safe play, which is going for the second town center and then booming? Similarly to Abbasid mirrors, in matchups where the players are very likely to add second town centers, if that's a mirror civilization matchup, it's possible that either of the players tries to add the third town center. Because, as we have seen in some Abbasid mirrors before, if the two players know that each other is just using 2 town centers, someone might be motivated to add the third one to try and get some villager lead. Looks like Viper is moving towards a stone mine over here, so he does want to add the second town center. Although, it's possible that the tower rush is in the equation. If you think about it, we have seen attempts from players with the Chinese to go for a forward Barbican of the Sun, use that as a staging ground, volleying the enemy, and it's possible that Viper is just mining stone because he wants to make forward towers and then go for the hand cannon emplacements on them. Viper is not really a big tower rusher, so I would be somewhat surprised if he went for such an aggressive gameplay, but you never know. It seems like he's only sending 1 villager to stone, so my suspicion of him going for a tower rush is growing bigger and bigger. Viper mined a tiny bit of gold for himself, which is going to accelerate his feudal age. As you could see, he needed a bit more gold so that he could drop the Imperial Palace out here. And it looks like he's going to open with the Imperial Palace, so no Barbican of the Sun for him. Definitely not at the front, but he's not mining stone with a lot of villagers, so we'll have to see what exactly he does with that. That palace is beautifully placed. It's going to affect the lumber camp, the mill, and it's also going to affect the mining camp. Whereas on the other side, the Imperial Palace is also coming in for VortiX. That's also a well-positioned building. It's going to affect the mill on the hunt. It's going to affect the lumber camp. And it's also going to affect the berries. So at some point, you will be placing a mill on the berries. And look at that. It's also going to affect the gold and stone mines. You might even be able to place a good gold mine or a mining camp in between that gold and stone mine. And I think that's what VortiX is doing. He can place 1 mining camp and access both the gold and stone, and now Viper is sending more villagers towards stone, so it's going to be a second town center built from him. Whereas on the other side, VortiX is not mining stone just yet, so we'll see if he's actually going for a second town center. He's got the mining camp foundation set up, but Viper does not see that. Viper doesn't see that there is going to be stone mining just yet. He still has all the sheep trailing his scout, so he did not drop them off. This is going to be sort of alarming for VortiX to see, because he's like, oh shoot, he's got 14 sheep trailing his scout, which means that he won't run out of food anytime soon. VortiX himself is operating with one scout, checking out the base of Viper right now, and he's going to see Viper mining stone. So he's fully aware that his opponent is going to play second TC, and it looks like the Imperial Economy is now finished here for VortiX, just now dropping the mining camp. Viper did not see his opponent mining stone. It's possible that he will still spot it if he loops around with this scout. And there is a forward Barbican. VortiX doesn't have the gold for that, so this should be just walls being built, I assume. Stone walls are banned, and there's a tower. Ooh, this is a little cheeky here for VortiX. And I kind of like that, because he's mining stone with quite a lot of villagers, so he will be able to afford the arrow slits emplacement, or the hand cannon slits to be precise. But he might also be able to add the second town center behind it, so he is putting up some aggression, so Viper will have to deal with that. And what's bigger is that behind this one, he's also going to have a second town center. Looks like two villagers are sent to the right side over here, and VortiX is splitting up his forces. Viper will find the villagers on the right side, so he's going to be like, oh shoot, I'm being towered. But it also means that he might have a slightly harder time spotting the tower on the left side. Looks like the tower is within his line of sight, however, so he's now going to spot his opponent going for a tower, and it looks like the town center is even able to reach the villagers out here. One villager falls, the second one is outside the range of the town center, but Viper is making a second TC. So if the second TC finishes here for Viper, before VortiX finishes the tower, VortiX could lose that villager. Low HP Will here retreating for VortiX, that's going to be lost as well. And so far, this is a massive disaster here for VortiX. Tower now being placed in the face of Viper. As I said at the beginning of this set, this is a set where, you know, the stakes aren't super high. So it's possible that VortiX isn't really going for his best go-to strategies over here, because this is probably the worst gameplay from VortiX I've seen for a long time. It might just be the fact that he's a little not warmed up, or something is going wrong. But I have to say that so far, this was a clumsy first two games here from VortiX. Viper is going to burn down the tower over here, and he will be able to intercept the two villagers escaping as well. Very nice move from Viper over here, and he's going to take down all the villagers. For now, it's 26 versus 23 in the villager department. VortiX is getting close to that second town center, but of course, Viper has that already up, and VortiX isn't messing around. He's dropping the Barbican of the Sun right in the face of Viper, whereas Viper is also thinking about something very similar. He's pulling a dozen villagers forward. He's going to drop it in this crossing. This could be a disaster for VortiX, because by the time he notices Viper's got that building over there, he's going to run into the fire of the Barbican of the Sun. That's gonna be a big no-no for VortiX. He's not gonna be able to get that up, that's for sure. And of course, this will mean that he's walking out there for absolutely nothing. So, ton of walking time on the villagers, yielding no result here for VortiX. There's a couple of sneaky villagers coming from behind though, so VortiX is not giving up on this tower rush, and that could actually be quite dangerous. And indeed, VortiX has no idea about the Barbican of the Sun. That's gonna come in as a nasty surprise. Luckily for him, Viper didn't have the villagers garrisoned, so it's only the hand cannon slits firing from that Barbican, which means only one villager falls here for VortiX, who's building up his own Barbican right now. He's behind by 8 villagers, but if he can get some towers up behind Viper's wood line, that could still set Viper back a tiny bit. Viper is going to spot that tower coming in as well, so wouldn't be surprised to see him pulling off some villagers to attack it, and there is an Imperial officer supervising a completely unused lumber camp. Little wasteful here for Viper, but not a disaster at this point. Tower goes up with hand cannon slits and the fortifications coming in at the same time for VortiX. Villagers are being pulled right now. Viper needs to burn that down before fortifications come in, and he's got the villager mass to do it. Especially if he has the textiles upgrade on those villagers, he should be able to keep most of those alive. He's trying to get away with a damaged villager, loses one will. He's also using his scouts to try and help out burning down the tower. Hand cannon slit's almost complete over here, so you gotta be careful here for Viper, but he should be able to burn it down. And even if Viper loses 1 or 2 villagers doing this, he's also going to kill 2 villagers from the opponent. So in the end, that's a reasonable trade for him. Tower gets burned down, and now Viper's gonna have to deal with that scout, and of course the 2 villagers escaping, and it looks like those villagers are once again looping around. VortiX is just constantly dropping tower after tower after tower. And one thing that we have to respect is the fact that despite the fact that VortiX is down by 8 villagers, his eco back at home is completely untouched. Meanwhile for Viper, he's constantly forced to pull villagers to deal with those towers. Another tower is being built right now by VortiX that's going to be cancelled upon seeing these scouts come in. Viper moving towards the berries as we speak. Another tower's coming in. Those should still be able to shoot at the villagers on the top of the hill. But now we're seeing Viper intercepting that new villager. I think what Viper really needs is a stable for 2 horsemen. If he gets that out, he's gonna be able to wipe out any kind of aggression that's coming his way, because really, it's only villagers at this point for VortiX. So really, VortiX has no tools of stopping even just 1 horseman with those wills. Down south, the villager was also intercepted, and with that being said, we are looking into another batch of villagers coming in here for VortiX. Viper is going to preemptively tower his berries. He still has a lot of sheep to work with, so even if he loses the berries, that's not a disaster. But of course, he wants to keep those alive as long as possible. Viper piling up resources for Castle Age. His opponent is not far away either, but that second town center is just now being built by VortiX, so despite the fact that he was mining stone for quite a long time, that second town center is just now being finished, and I wonder if he's going to try a third one, because he's got enough stone for a third one pretty much. He needs to mine 6 more to be able to get a third one going. He's a little low on the wood department, but given the fact that Viper was on 2 TCs for quite a while, I would suspect VortiX potentially trying to go for a third town center here. Viper is on the way to Castle Age, dropping the astronomical clock tower right now. He's got some villages going, which of course helps a lot. It's a very wood efficient way to get a lot of housing space for yourself. And he's rushing up the clock tower quite relentlessly. He probably wants to beat his opponent to Castle Age by as much as possible, because having the Castle Age advantage with the Chinese brings quite a lot of good things to the table. Number one, of course, is the ability to start popping out those palace guards. And because the palace guards move so fast compared to other infantry, it's rather easy to get some of those palace guards to just get to the opponent's base and start harassing the eco. Now it looks like we have absolutely no production buildings here for Viper. He's got the clock tower, but no barracks, nothing. He has just 1 blacksmith being built, and VortiX will start walling himself off, knowing that Viper is about to come in with Castle Age forces. Viper's got some scouts to try and slow down this process, but those scouts shouldn't be able to prevent the villagers from at least establishing the wall foundations here. Third town center right now in place for VortiX. He's playing a bit of a SimCity over here right now. He's behind by 18 villagers, but he should be able to get back on track quite easily over here. If I do the math, it should take around... Oh, that's a lot of time. That's actually quite a lot of time. At least 4 or 5 minutes for him to catch up in terms of villagers. It's basically 13 seconds, that's the time it takes to train a villager with Song Dynasty, times 18, that's what you're looking for over here. Another villager could get picked off by the Scout of Viper, that's a nice pickup over there for him. So 13 times 18 seconds is what it's going to take for VortiX to catch up in terms of villagers compared to Viper, assuming that both players continuously make villagers on all of their available town centers. Looks like Viper is operating the first trebuchet out here, the unit that really emerged as one of the key siege weapons in this tournament. Before the tournament, you rarely saw players using trebuchets, but now it is one of the key siege weapons because players are realizing that while a single trebuchet doesn't have a ton of firepower, that extra range is very valuable because it makes it very difficult for the opponent to snipe those siege weapons. The Barbican right now of VortiX is under fire. VortiX still in feudal age, he's trying to catch up in the villager department, and you could see for a brief moment Viper adding some stables, so he wants to play with a couple of lancers over here. Meanwhile, on the other side, there is no sign of any military being added right now, so VortiX still just trying to catch up with the villagers, trying to sort of buffer these attacks with his walls. Players are not allowed to build stone walls in feudal age, so if VortiX wants to stonewall himself, he needs to get to Castle Age first. He's just now transitioning to a farming eco. He's got quite a lot of wood in the bank to do this. But of course, this comes at a quite underwhelming time, because he doesn't want to focus on making farms. He just wants to focus on getting up to Castle Age. So all villagers on food and gold. If he is forced to send so many villagers to wood, just so that he can afford the farms, that's going to further delay his Castle Age timing. Viper gets rid of the Barbican, and the next target is likely going to be those palisades in front of VortiX's base. VortiX slowly catching up in terms of villagers. Now he's only down by 10, dropping a blacksmith as we speak. He has managed to set up that farming eco quite fast, and he's still mining stone. I would think that once he gets to Castle Age, he's going to try to stonewall himself here, because he must know that he's going to be behind in terms of military count. Barbican now burning. Viper's got some scouts over here harassing villagers, but the Frey town centers will deal with that one scout out there. Viper's got a second one inside the base of the opponent, I think a third one even, because there is a blue dot right next to those walls. Indeed, Viper's got 3 scouts in the opponent's base, now only 2 because one of them got killed. Viper now assembling the Lancers, and those Lancers, if they get into the base of VortiX, they will just wreak havoc. They will just run across the town center fire, start killing villagers left and right, and VortiX doesn't really have the army to fight that. More precisely, VortiX has exactly 0 army to work with. So at this point, if those knights ever get into the base of VortiX, he's gonna be in trouble. Clock tower now coming in for VortiX, and it looks like he's dropping barracks. I wonder if he's playing palace guards here or spearmen. He did not see the cavalry of Viper. Viper was smart. He was hiding those Lancers until the Barbican was destroyed. So right now, VortiX has no idea about the Lancers coming in. He might think Viper is playing Palace Guards. And if VortiX is going for Palace Guards here, he could be in trouble, because those won't be able to stop those Lancers. Palisades are being broken through. Now is the time to try and get some stone walls over there. But it's going to be a little too late. Now the Knights arrive to the base of VortiX, but he doesn't even have a single army right now. He could use his officers to supervise those barracks, but it might already be too late, because the Knights are flooding in, and this is just an absolute fiesta for Viper. He knows really well that it's all about catching those villagers before any army pops out on the battlefield. In fact, he's targeting the barracks. He's realizing that his opponent is so much behind in terms of military that he can just burn down the buildings before a single spearman pops out. There is a Dark Age spearman right now. Imperial officer being picked off as well, which mean that supervising the blacksmith for the upgrade, supervising the barracks for the production won't really be a possibility. VortiX is just so dead right now. He's losing that springboard that he just made. The lumberjacks are being slain on the wood line, and this is not going to go anywhere here for VortiX. He has absolutely no army to defend his base with. He is now losing 2 barracks up front, and indeed, VortiX steps out. Decisive victory here in game number 2 for Viper. As I said after or during game number 1, we have to keep in mind that VortiX has a guaranteed spot in the playoffs, but this is not the VortiX that we usually see. So far Viper is dominating this set, and I'm not going to lie, if Viper played like this in the previous sets, he probably wouldn't be at an elimination position, because it's not only VortiX having a somewhat sloppy day so far, it's also Viper being in a very dominant position. He's really playing well, making smart decisions, executing the game plan really well. Of course, part of this game went down for VortiX failing with those tower rushes. You gotta wonder if he actually tried that, if this was a more important game, like let's say a playoff game, or potentially a set that would have influenced him surviving the Swiss stage or not. So we'll have to see how that goes, but in the end, it is going to be the Viper taking game number 2 here, and now he's moving on to match point. I am fairly certain, because this is what everybody who is understanding the book holds, tiebreakers, and the entire format of the tournament, everybody is saying that Viper has no mathematical chance, and I also believe the same thing. So I'll be very surprised if Viper had any chance of passing over here, because everybody is saying, including myself, that Viper's got no shot here. So he's fighting for his pride. He's currently 0-4. He could take a win here against VortiX. Whereas for VortiX, he was standing at 2-2. So he would go down to 2-3, which would put him at the middle of the Swiss bracket. He would still get to the playoffs. But for him, of course, as I said, the importance of this set is less significant. He definitely doesn't want to show some important strategies that he's saving for the playoffs. So we could potentially see here a sort of minimalistic gameplay from VortiX, just trying to show as little as he can, playing with some slightly off-meta strategies that are just cheesy, but stuff that he wouldn't normally do, or at least wouldn't normally do this way in the playoffs. Welcome back to the Viper versus VortiX. We are jumping into game number 3, which is going to be on the second home map of VortiX. It is Altai we are going for, and it is going to be an English mirror. So we had a Chinese mirror in the previous game, now it's an English mirror. So far Viper is up 2-0, as we all have in the blue colors Viper playing on the right side of the map, And on the left side, we will have VortiX playing as the red English as well. Of course, English mirrors over here is once again a topic where we can mention that while the meta is going to be longbows for both, the key question is going to be who is going to deviate from that longbowman aggression with towers a little bit and maybe try to squeeze in a second town center or something like that. Because in the mirror matchups, that's what you're looking for. You're trying to carve out some sort of advantage over your opponent. So you might actually do things that you might not normally do against some other civilizations. And on this map, Altai, English usually want to go for that longbow plus tower aggression in the early game. And they don't usually go for a second town center. But in an English mirror setup, you could actually justify or at least attempt doing something like this, simply because you need to find a way to get an advantage over your opponent, and using a second town center in Feudal Age to do that is actually a great way of building up a very consistent and steady villager lead. Looks like the northern side of VortiX's base will be quite open over here. You see, he's kind of far away from that northern cliff, because the cliff is over here and his base is over here. He's actually very close to the southern cliff over here, which will mean that his left side is easily vulnerable, but the right side will be difficult to defend. So once our observer switches to the entire map view, we will be able to look at the resource distribution and see how much damage that could cause. Viper is sort of evenly distributed between the two cliffs over here. Was quite successful collecting sheep. That's like 7 sheep trailing his scout right now. VortiX wasn't so successful, as both players are operating with 1 scout for the time being. Viper does have a mill back at home, which could be a sign that he wants to go for early farming, although this mill is placed on the berries, which means that he won't be able to surround it with farms. So if he wanted to just go for farms, he would place that mill in a way that it's further away from the berries, so he can start surrounding it with farms immediately. So it might be a mix of the two. He might just have a couple of villagers on berries and place 2 farms around the mill. We'll have to see about that one. For now, he's grabbing wheelbarrow from it. But given the fact that the English have a very nice farming bonus, it's very possible that Viper will try to go for that. Looks like Viper is going to delay his Feudal Age quite a bit because of this, though. He's dropping farms as we speak. This is a build order that we haven't really seen so far. Quite a bit delayed Feudal Age for the English, but of course you're going to start building up that powerful farming economy right at the beginning. Meanwhile, for VortiX, he's going for the standard English opening, with the council hall being dropped to the northern side of the town center. He's dropping a mill himself, same thing as Viper, dropping it on the berries. The hunt of both players is quite heavily exposed. So if you look at the hunt locations, this one, this one, this one, and this one, the only legitimate and relatively safe hunt is going to be this one for Viper. The other 3 patches of huntables are all quite heavily exposed. This up top, it might be accessible for VortiX because the opponent usually has a slow-moving army with the English, so he might not be poking around that area. But both players' primary hunts are up front, which will make life a little difficult for them if they want to access that. That's an interesting farm location over there for Viper, but it should be good. Yeah, it's good. It's going to be a 4-2-4 farm placement. It's interesting that he did it this way. I would have thought that he's going to sort of rotate that 90 degrees, but it really doesn't matter. For now, it's going to be the most effective farm placement over here for Viper, as he's coming up with the council hall as well. His gold mine is also exposed, but he's got a backup back at the back of his base, so he can go for that backup if he needs to. He's got 2 forests, one at the front, one at the back. So very nice starting base over here for Viper. But one thing that he doesn't have access to is stone. And that could be an interesting factor to consider because, of course, not only could you consider mining stone for an extra town center, which doesn't seem to be the case for either of these players, you could also use that stone to get arrow slits emplacements or fortifications on your towers. And that could be a key thing, especially if one player wants to go for a ton of aggression in Feudal Age. Longbows are now counting over for VortiX. His first couple of longbows, of course, will take some time until they reach Viper's base, and looks like Viper is going to play ultra defensive over here. He's just now reaching Feudal Age, starting to add farms. And the thing here is that despite the fact that Viper is slower to Feudal Age than the opponent, it won't really matter because he can just start massing up longbows back at home. And by the time VortiX has 2 or 3 longbows arriving to the base of Viper, Viper is going to have 2 or 3 longbows to hold them off. So, because of the slow movement speed of those longbows for VortiX, By the time he's able to mass some of them in front of Viper's base, Viper's gonna have comparable numbers to fight them off. And as you see, indeed, Viper is now adding the longbows. He's going to play very defensive here and mostly focus on the farming eco being built up, as it looks like Viper's scout will be intercepted here. Gets a couple of arrows in his body, but it will survive. Looks like VortiX was able to get away with a couple more sheep from the middle. For now, it's 5 army for VortiX, 3 for Viper, and the problem that VortiX is facing is that he doesn't actually know how many longbows Viper has. And this is making his push very risky here, potentially. Because right now, Viper is focusing on the eco. It's obvious Viper doesn't want to push his opponent. So far, it's building only the farms, no berries being touched. And that's the reason why I'm a little surprised about the mill positioning. If you just want to go for farms exclusively, place your mill in a way that it's not close to the berries. Because if you're not touching the berries, might as well just place the mill in the middle of nowhere. Especially for the English, because in most cases, when the English are playing this eco-heavy approach in Feudal Age, they just want to go for full farming, completely ignore hunt, completely ignore berries. So Viper's gonna have to pick those berries in order to be able to add some more farms over there. This being said, his farming eco is much more well set up than the one from VortiX, and it looks like VortiX is dropping an early blacksmith here, so he's going to try to carve out a military lead here, probably with the defense and attack upgrades coming in. VortiX also grabbed the lumberjacking upgrade, so that's going to give a nice wood income boost to him. Whereas for Viper, he's now starting to pick those berries, so indeed he's cleaning up the space for more farms. Viper is very heavy on gold mining here. What I'm suspecting, especially given the fact that he's using the backup gold mine, is that he wants to rush a castle age here. If you look at his food income, it's 600 already, and he's at 300 gold. Now, it's possible that he's gonna have the gold he needs for castle age before he gets the food, but it's possible he's just rushing up that gold mining operation because he knows that VortiX could deny those gold mines. So Viper is like, okay, I will mine the gold as long as I have access to it, and then just fall back into the safety of my base. New mill is being dropped right now by Viper. That's going to be a little more exposed, however, so the longbows of VortiX could actually do some damage here. Ranged attack upgrade coming in for VortiX. And indeed, those farms up front could be quite exposed. VortiX does have a scout nearby and he's going for the gold miners. That's what I referred to. You want to gather that gold before the enemy army arrives here. VortiX is going to block the wall foundation over there, and with that, longbows opening fire on the villager. Viper's gonna have to evacuate his gold mine, and guess what? Viper is in now serious trouble. He doesn't have any gold income, and both of his gold mines are denied, with absolutely no fallback option. The next closest gold mine is in this little corner over here. That's going to be very difficult for Viper to protect, and his opponent does have the attack upgrade coming in for those longbows. Now, of course, Viper does have the network of castles bonus helping his longbowmen, and he also has an easier time reinforcing, and now he's trapping that army at the back of his base. He finished those walls, which means now VortiX cannot really escape, at least not through the passage that he came from. And if Viper starts adding some more longbows, he could easily clean this army up. And remember, Viper is not far away from Castle Age. In fact, now that those longbows are at the back of his base, he could go for the gold mine up front. This is actually a cheeky play here from Viper. He's realizing that, okay, my opponent's army is at the back of my base, might as well go for the gold mine at the front. He's going to lose one of the villagers on the gold mine though, because there are some longbows harassing him. What Viper needs to do is send his longbows to the front, clean up those red longbowmen that are harassing the gold miners, get the gold he needs for Castle Age, and then get to castle himself. Now the problem is that he's losing a substantial amount of villagers doing this. That's already 3-4 villagers being picked off, and if you look at the villager count, it's 25 versus 34. Of course, with the King's Palace, he will be able to compensate for those losses, so I would think that these will have a minimal effect, or at least a limited effect, as Castle Age is coming in for him. The problem that he's facing is that VortiX realized what was going on. VortiX knows fully well that Viper is scrambling for Castle, and his response is going to be going to Castle himself, and he's on the way to Castle Age in a matter of seconds as well. So, in the end, Viper tried to rush Castle Age here, but that did not work out well. It's going to be more longbows denying the landmark. Viper could be in serious trouble, actually, because those longbows could potentially commit against those villagers, and that's exactly what's happening. Longbows are realizing that they could easily cut off Viper from that King's Palace, and Viper has to scramble all the villagers to make that landmark happen. He's down to 24 villagers. Longbows will be taken down here by the town center fire, but this is 100% worth it here for VortiX. He was able to decimate Viper's villager count so effectively. And now Viper is down to 23 vills. And because VortiX is also aging up to Castle Age, Viper won't have that window with 2 town centers to just sort of recuperate the villager losses. 2 town centers are up for Viper. But of course, VortiX is almost up to castle as well and has a 14 villagers lead. This is an insanely difficult scenario right now for Viper, if not impossible. In a mirror matchup, being down 14 villagers might be a GG scenario. Siege Engineering, an upgrade that's not completed just yet for VortiX, given the fact that he's the only player with an army. Oh yeah, Viper taps out. Viper taps out, he knows very well that his opponent is up to Castle Age. He knows very well that VortiX is going to have the same King's Palace that he has, and it's a mirror civilization matchup. It's a matchup where you fall behind once, it's very difficult to come back from it, especially if your opponent gets to Castle Age. Viper's only hope was that he's beating his opponent to Castle by a massive margin, but VortiX didn't really commit a lot of longbows to this. It's not like VortiX committed dozens of resources to make 20, 30, 40 longbows. It's not like he committed a lot of resources grabbing upgrades like Siege Engineering. VortiX barely did anything in terms of aggression. He made like 6 or 7 longbows, got 1 attack upgrade, and that was it. But he was able to inflict so much damage because Viper's army was basically non-existent, and hitting that gold mine was jackpot. Because hitting that gold mine basically meant that Viper was delayed a solid 2 minutes going into Castle Age. And of course, Viper also lost a significant portion of his villagers trying to build that landmark. And with that, VortiX now strikes back at Viper. It's a 2-1 scoreline for Viper as we're going to his first home map over here. Hillandale was won by Viper, and now we do have a victory for VortiX on Altai. So he was able to secure at least 1 win on his 2 home maps, but if VortiX wants to reverse sweep this set, he's gonna have to take away both home maps of Viper, both of those being open maps, Highview and Lipany. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Viper versus VortiX. We are going into game number 4 with the Viper spawning on the right side, playing as the Rus in blue, and on the left side it is VortiX playing as the Abbasid dynasty in red. Rus versus Abbasids, not necessarily a civilization matchup that you commonly see on maps like this. The map is likely Highview. We've talked about the fact that there is 2 open maps for Viper to pick from, and I always forget which maps the players are picking because there is quite a lot of breaks going on in between the games. And, you know, in those breaks, I always take my own break and then just cut out the breaks after the sets are done. So part of the reason why I don't often remember what maps we're actually playing is because the breaks are quite long. It's like 6, 7, 8 minutes, and in some cases it's even more. Looks like the map is not actually Highview, which makes the Rus pick here a little surprising. The map seems to be Lipany because it's an open map with quite a lot of cliffs. It's a little difficult to tell which map it is, of course, when the minimap is quite dark still, as we are at player POVs instead of the global view. But once the global view shows up, we should see this one being Lipany. So I'm curious to see what Viper has on his mind with the Rus, because Rus is not really a traditional civilization pick for a map like Lipany. For now, the scout dancing does begin, and Viper is quite successful gathering the bounty over here. You can see that he's got 2 scouts going for the deer, which means that he can one-shot deer over here without VortiX being able to interfere. And he also had a 3rd scout, I think, somewhere. So he's quite successful taking down the hunt. Whereas on the other side, for VortiX, he's got 2 scouts operating, but one of those is bringing in sheep. He was able to aggro some of the wolves, however, and you see he's trying to dance around with that scout over there, trying to damage one of the deer without Viper being able to take it down. Viper, however, being able to one-shot the deer, he can just focus down both of those. Now with the 2nd scout in as well for VortiX, the 2 players will dance around each other with these scouts, and in the end, both players will be able to take down some of the deer. Viper at 170 bounty right now, and indeed we're playing Lipany. I would like to highlight one little element of this map. This crazy hill. It's one big darkness, which is like 5 layers of hills out there. That's a little weird. It's not going to affect the game by any means, but it's a little crazy to look at. I'm curious to see if our observer is going to show that to us. It's very insignificant, but sometimes on Lipany you get those generations where you just have a gigantic mountain that's not something that's traversable for any units. Now that most of the hunt has been gotten rid of, you're going to have the scouts of Viper actually scouting the rest of the map. There are still some wolves to aggro, and let's talk about the civilizations now. Because Viper, as I said, slightly unconventional civilization selection to go for the Rus on this map, whereas on the other side, the Abbasids is basically the meta pick nowadays on Lipany. Lipany has a ton of berries to work with. which means that the Abbasids will be very happy using all of those. Of course, Delhi would also be an option, but Delhi is usually banned by the players. The berries here, 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 even here. Those are the berries that VortiX can work with, of course, other than the ones that he has inside his base. Those are not spectacular berry spots, by the way. As you see, all of those are somewhat in the middle of the battlefield. Viper's got quite a lot of berries to work with as well, but those are way less significant for the Rus. So this is going to come down to the Abbasid player being able to control the berries or not. Golden Gate coming in as we speak for the Viper, whereas on the other side, you're likely going to see the Economy Wing come in. Indeed, Economy Wing is on the way for VortiX. That is the usual meta here with the Abbasid, so no deviation from the meta strategies for VortiX, and it looks like Viper will be able to aggro 2 Wolves. He's already at level 2 bounties, so being able to take 2 Wolves over here is a very nice cherry on the top of this cake right now. VortiX will try to yoink one of those Wolves from the back of Viper's Scout. Viper just needs to make sure that those Wolves are damaged to 1 shot by VortiX before he turns around and shoots it. VortiX should not be able to get a kill here. There is the Wolf with low HP. Viper needs to keep a close distance between his Scout and those Wolves, because indeed he needs to be able to turn back and shoot it. VortiX tried to yoink it, but the probability of him being able to do that was quite low. Viper's got one of the hunting cabins on his wood line, and it looks like we're going to see Viper buying wood. That's an interesting opening here, not something that you commonly see with the Rus. He's going for a stable. This could be just a standard Knights play to open with, or even Horseman actually. Because Viper is not mining a lot of gold. I think he might have a mining camp. There's a blue dot next to that gold mine. So I'm curious if he actually is mining any gold here. Villager distribution is not shown on this overlay, so we won't be able to tell that. But if he's mining gold, then it's definitely going to be Knights. But it is possible that we would just see some Horsemen coming in. We'll get a clearer picture in a matter of seconds about that one. He's at 340 bounty, which is quite admirable. On the other side, VortiX is going to be playing with just the second town center, dropping a stable. Viper will be aware of that. Looks like here comes the first unit out of that stable, and indeed it's just going to be Horsemen. So that's part of the reason why Viper decided to buy himself some wood. He wanted to drop a tower, so he's going to boost his lumberjacking and protect his lumberjacks. And he also wanted to afford a stable here. So, because he's not mining gold, apparently, he's not going to be making any knights. Response from VortiX for now is just going to be a couple of spears. But I think Viper's expecting this. First of all, he's coming in with the scouts to harass those stone miners. And the question is whether or not he's able to deny the stone from the opponent, because his first horseman is coming in. For now, that's distracted by the scout of VortiX. But Viper dropping his own barracks right now. This could be just horseman, spearman, ton of feudal age aggression. But what my idea was here for Viper, as he's harassing those stone miners quite relentlessly with 3 scouts he has. VortiX having the first spearman pop out here. Viper shouldn't be able to deny the stone from him. VortiX will be delayed a tiny bit mining stone, but he will be able to get to that second town center soon. So I wonder if Viper's plan is to mix in some horsemen, force his opponent to commit towards spears, and then try to go for a semi-fast castle and go for horse archers. Because by adding a couple of horsemen here for Viper, you basically guarantee yourself that your opponent will start adding spears with the Abbasids, which could give you a very nice window to get horse archers going once you get to Castle Age, and have a unit composition that's capable of beating the existing one of VortiX. For now, it looks like Viper is going to drop a blacksmith for himself. He is not really banking up a ton of resources, whereas VortiX already has a decent amount of food in the bank. Of course, he has gotten the fresh foodstuffs upgrade, and the hardened spearman upgrade is just now coming in for him. He has abandoned his gold mine. He's just going for the 2 town center play, of course, with the Abbasids here, and he's going to drop that second town center on the hunt. Now, there is some risk associated with this for VortiX, and the reason why that is the case is because his gold mines are dangerously exposed. Look at the locations of those gold mines. All of those gold mines are up front and hard to defend. And of course, he's going to have a good food eco because he's able to take the hunt, and he's also going to protect the back of that wood line with that second TC. But protecting the gold mines could be troublesome, and that is something that could delay his Castle Age progress. Looks like the horsemen will find the villagers on the town center here. Spearmen will be adjusted, and it looks like the horsemen won't be able to find villager kills, although they seem to commit against this one. One villager goes down, horsemen now getting taken down by the spears. Viper was able to pick off one villager, but that was all that he could accomplish. Meanwhile, however, I think we're seeing some archers appear on the battlefield soon for Viper. Did I see an archer range from him? There is definitely a range from VortiX. Curious to see if Viper is going to add his own range, because if he goes for some archers as well, he could pick off all the spears of VortiX, and as I said, the opportunity is wide open for Viper to deny gold from the opponent, and if he denies gold from VortiX, VortiX will never be able to get to Castle Age, and then Viper just beats him to Castle and destroys him with men-at-arms and knights. Battering ram coming in here for Viper. This is something that was spotted by VortiX for a brief moment. You could see the foundation of that ram being built. So VortiX is now aware that his opponent is going for a battering ram, and this isn't really going to work out well for Viper. Viper's got 19 army over 11, but most of Viper's army is just horsemen, whereas on the left side, we have VortiX with already hardened spearmen out there. Here comes the cavalry from Viper. He's going to try and jump on the berries, now sees the spearmen, and this should discourage Viper from pushing this one, or is it? Viper's got his own archers and spears on the battlefield, but of course, reinforcing this battlefield is going to be a little easier for VortiX over here. He's got archers and spears versus horsemen, archers, and spearmen. Viper is grouping up his forces inside that battering ram, waiting for him to have an opportunity to jump out of there. There's apparently one archer that's failing to garrison into the ram. You see, he's trailing the ram as we speak. Archers focusing down the ones from Viper. Overextension here potentially from VortiX, as it looks like Viper is going to force him back inside his base. This is match point. Viper could win this set. This could be his only set victory in the Swiss stage if he wins this game right now, and he's in a rather acceptable position. He's going for that full food wood army composition, horsemen, spearmen, archers, which means that he's going to maximize the efficiency of the Rus economy. He's got the food gathering bonus thanks to the fact that he's got the bounty, and he's got the wood gathering bonus because he's got the defensive tower on the wood line. So his food and wood eco right now is quite well set up, and that allows him to get quite a lot of spearmen, archers, and horsemen onto the battlefield. Archers will try to get some villager picks over here. Indeed, they do get one. VortiX behind this one only has 3 villagers advantage, and he is massing up quite a lot of forces. 30 army versus 23. Does Viper have enough numbers, however, to escort that ram to the base of the opponent? Because that's the big question here. Can you escort that ram out there? It looks like we're going to have VortiX expanding out of his base with the berries, something that you would normally expect. This is a great angle for Viper to push from, because he's denying a full patch of berries over here. Looks like VortiX will lose his scout over there to the spearman, which means that now he's going to be blind, at least about what is happening in the middle of the map. First battering ram now knocking on that mill. This is something that VortiX can give up on. That mill is right now quite insignificant, but he's going to try and pull the spearman, damage that battering ram. Archers for Viper will open up. A little bit mispositioned of an archer group here for VortiX, but he's going to be able to get some torches going against that ram. And now he's ready to take that fight. Viper's horsemen are nowhere to be found on the battlefield. They went in to try and get some raiding going on that gold mine, but I don't think that VortiX is mining gold at all. Indeed, he's got 28 gold per minute, so right now, VortiX is just going for a full food and wood unit composition as well for the defense. But he's got the superior numbers now, 40 to 31. The little concerning thing right now for VortiX is that he's gonna have to kill those cavalry first before he can really take a good engagement here with his archers. Here comes the fight. Archers seem to be in better numbers here for VortiX, and that's going to be a key factor. VortiX taking down most of the spearmen of his opponent. Horsemen not in large quantities here for Viper. And with the spearmen disappearing from the battlefield here for Viper, soon, the archers of VortiX will start targeting all of those archers from Viper. Cavalry now coming in from Viper. Spearmen are still working to great effect over here for the Abbasid player. And of course, reinforcing the battlefield is also much easier. A couple of horsemen also popped out on the battlefield for VortiX. Looks like this is going to be an even trade, but of course, that favors the Abbasid player by a massive margin. Looks like VortiX still trying to focus down the archers here. Now going for the spears. Some more horsemen are coming in for Viper. Battering ram still poking away at buildings, but villagers will be pulled to take it down, and ultimately, Viper's push stalls out. Identical unit compositions were used with comparable micro, and in the end, the result is basically an even trade. It looks like VortiX might be able to clean up most of the archers of Viper. He's closing the distance and pushing in further and further. And with that, it looks like we're going to have most of the archers from Viper cleaned up. Viper is still trying to amp up the pressure over here, but behind this one, of course, VortiX is building up a villager lead. And things are getting a little sketchy and concerning here for Viper, because he isn't really able to accomplish much with this push, and he's falling behind more and more in terms of villagers. For now, archers will still trade evenly. Numbers are looking better and better for Viper, however. He's reinforcing this battlefield like there is no tomorrow. He's got quite a lot of archers on the battlefield. Viper's also got the ranged attack and defense upgrade, which is a massive difference compared to VortiX. VortiX has no combat upgrades on his units, and that could be part of the reason why Viper is pushing this. I may have underestimated the size and the capabilities of Viper's forces, because he's just trickling in horsemen and archers wave after wave, and this is a spectacular push so far by Viper. Not an easy push to do at all, of course, because the Abbasids are able to reinforce this battlefield so easily, and they do have a powerful food economy thanks to the berries. Viper is using the hunts right now for his own food eco, but his army is growing in numbers, and guess what? Viper's at 34 army as compared to the 20 of VortiX. Ram now knocking at that archer range. Looks like VortiX will be pulling the villagers over here to take it down. He's got enough villagers to burn down that ram very easily. Viper might try to pick off a couple of villas, but he's pulling away that ram as we speak. Horseman also coming in to absorb some arrow fire. For now, Viper will retreat in orderly fashion, but he's going to lose the battering ram. VortiX once again buying himself some time. VortiX had to sacrifice quite a few villagers for this one, however, so you see his villager lead is still just 10. Archers will still trade evenly against each other, as we do have the archer numbers still growing quite rapidly for Viper. And one thing that's missing now from the battlefield for VortiX is spearmen, or anything that really deals with those horsemen. And that extra ranged armor that Viper has on those horsemen is extremely helpful when it comes to soaking up the arrow fire of VortiX's archers. Viper once again pushing deeper into the opponent's base. New rams are being built. And Viper is just not stopping with this level of aggression. Even a forward tower is being placed here. VortiX is going to have to fight this one in Feudal Age, because Viper isn't thinking about Castle Age himself. It's going to be a full feudal war here. Of course, one of the things to look at is going to be how sustainable the food and wood eco is for the players. In terms of wood, it looks like the starting forest of VortiX is running dry, and if you look at his second forest, is out here. So soon, wood access could be problematic for VortiX. He's running out of berries on the north as well, but he still has some hunt to take, and it looks like Viper found those berry villagers. This is going to be extremely important. For now, the villagers could fight back, but Viper now knows that his opponent's berry patch is over there, so that is definitely raidable, and that's basically the only source of food that VortiX has currently. Looks like we have another big battle unfolding here. More and more towers being dropped by Viper. Archers currently trading evenly here, now both players having similar blacksmith upgrades. Horsemen in the party as well for VortiX, as it looks like the battering rams will be able to take down that one archer range. That's going to be impactful here as well, because of course, that's going to hurt the production of VortiX quite a bit. Second tower getting denied. Archers in line formation for Viper. That's going to maximize the damage output he can get from those villagers from VortiX. Once again being pulled, as the rams are getting forced back for the time being. VortiX needs to keep those houses alive. This is match point for Viper, by the way. 51 villagers compared to 62, so the eco lead is still on the side of VortiX. Army numbers, however, increasing rapidly for Viper. 41 versus 27, and it's just growing more and more. Viper is running low on hunt, however, so soon he's gonna have to find an alternative source of food. Same thing for our red player, VortiX. He was forced off from those berries, and now another tower comes in from Viper. He isn't messing around. He just wants to press onto this advantage, but he's realizing that this tower may have been overly ambitious, or is he? Another tower is being dropped as we speak. He's burning down the houses of his opponent, which could make life a little more difficult for VortiX. He's got enough housing space for 20 more units, so he doesn't have to worry about this one just yet. What's more concerning for VortiX is going to be access to wood, because Viper is bleeding him dry at this point. There's basically no wood left for VortiX on that forest. And Viper, of course, could deny the other one. Archers will trade evenly here, as Viper is just pushing deeper and deeper into the opponent's base. Now VortiX has the melee attack upgrade on his units as well, so he could send in the horsemen to fight this one. But of course, Viper has a great staging ground over here. Viper can fall back to those towers, and it's going to be very difficult for VortiX to clean up those towers. There's the first battering ram coming in here for VortiX. That's going to soak up a lot of arrow fire. Spearmen also being pulled by VortiX to try and push this one. But the archers will probably just jump into those towers, each of those being able to field 8 units inside. And indeed, the archers are retreating in a quite orderly fashion. And now, you see most of the horsemen disappearing. This is a fight that Viper could potentially take. He could garrison those towers at the archers and force back the archers of his opponent, and that is exactly what he's doing right now. Not a lot of units that are able to burn down rams over here for Viper, however, so he could lose that first tower up front. Still, VortiX is just sending in archer after archer, spearman after spearman, horseman after horseman here, and this is just one big grind in the middle. identical unit compositions, and basically the two players are spamming armies into each other. So it really is coming down to whoever is able to take a slightly more advantageous fight, use some numbers advantage, or be able to grab an upgrade that the opponent has or opponent doesn't have, use that to his advantage. Villagers were pulled to burn down one of the battering rams for Viper. Second battering ram is also going to get taken down. 69 villagers for VortiX, very nice. 57 for Viper. The food eco of Viper is dropping, however. 475 per minute now. 460, 445. I think Viper just ran out of food. And that is going to be concerning because, as you see, VortiX's food eco is a steady 1000 food per minute. And I get the feel that now VortiX is gaining momentum. He's getting closer and closer to potentially taking down that tower. Archers are still holding off the repair villagers from that ram. But for now, VortiX will take his time, repair that battering ram. And there is something going on the left side. What is this? That might be just a berry patch, but I saw some blue dots over there as well. So I'm suspecting that there could be some fighting going on there even. Of course, for VortiX, it's all about making sure that he's got access to those berries. Because as long as that happens, he's going to have no trouble reinforcing his armies. Looks like VortiX now is going to be chopping wood on the north, and this is very much exposed. Villager gets taken down by the archers of Viper, but this is a window that VortiX will use to try and push those towers. Villagers are also being pulled to burn those down, but this could be risky for VortiX. He could be risking losing all his villagers, and he's realizing that. He's going to call off his villagers for the time being. One tower is now set on fire. New archers popping out as well, and it looks like Viper is getting pushed back once again. I feel like now the berry eco of the Abbasids is showing its power, and VortiX has enough food to get to Castle Age. He just doesn't have the gold, but he has enough momentum to wipe out Viper's army over here, take down the forward villagers, and potentially even press on into Viper's base. I feel like once this pressure from Viper disappears, VortiX is gonna be in a great position. He's ahead by 12 economy, and he's cleaning up Viper's forces right now. He also will take down 3 forward villagers over here, and now with the horsemen of VortiX appearing on the battlefield, this is going to be a fight being won most likely by VortiX over here. Viper's got some horsemen himself, and you see the villagers of VortiX were taking down the villagers of Viper, and the villagers are also being used to take down the horsemen over here. And with that, now Viper is down to 20 army. His opponent is also at 20 army, but the pressure now is relieved from VortiX's base, so the moment he starts mining gold, he's going to get closer and closer to that Castle Age. I think at this point he still needs to commit to feudal pressure though, simply because he cannot afford to let Viper establish a forward position like that again. Archers still trading evenly here as new horsemen appear on the battlefield for both, but this is an even trade and that's no longer good for Viper. He's behind an eco and his opponent is able to carve out a bigger and bigger lead on the battlefield. Viper is now sending horsemen over to the northern side of the map, so he's realizing that he needs to do something about those berries, but now his military presence is somewhat minimal. If you look at his resources, he's basically completely out of resources, which means that every single bit of resource that he gathers is spent on army. He has no intentions of going up to Castle Age. He's going for the board, which is a great move from him, and given the fact that he still has map control, it's the right decision to do. Meanwhile, on the other side, it looks like we're going to have, finally, VortiX stabilizing. Looks like he's still spending most of his food on armies, so you see he has no desire to get to Castle Age here. He's just making more and more archers, spearmen, and given the fact that he's Abbasids, and he can just make siege weapons without the upgrade, he could just go for that. Looks like Viper is moving in on the gold mine. As I said, this could be the only saving grace here for Viper. If he can somehow deny his opponent from Castle Age, make this a full Feudal Age game. VortiX is not far away from getting the gold he needs for Castle. And you could even justify making a market at this point to just sell some resources, go up to Castle Age. Because the moment VortiX gets to Castle Age, Viper has no shot at this. Just a few men-at-arms appearing on the battlefield is not something that Viper has answered to. Looks like Viper is assembling a push on the berries on the north. I think those berries are almost depleted, so by the time Viper's push arrives, VortiX might be able to give up on that position. Now, looking at the army numbers, it's 49 versus 37, and once again, VortiX is able to get his gold mine back on track. He wants to get up to Castle Age. He realizes that this is the window that he could utilize. Viper has at least 3 archer ranges, 3 stable, so he's going in full feudal. Next layer of walls coming in here for VortiX. He knows very well that he needs to stall that push out. And I think he's about to click up to Castle Age. And once Castle Age comes in, Viper's situation is going to be even worse. And this would even up the set, and we would go into a decider game between Viper and VortiX here. Viper was very confident in game number 1 and 2, but now you get the feel that VortiX is finally warmed up. Because as I said, In game number 1 and 2, VortiX felt a little sloppy. Now he's playing a lot more confident here. He's losing a couple of villagers to those archers as he takes the battle in the middle. But as things stand, he's just going to push back the forces of Viper. He's got the pure numbers advantage. The Spearman with the Phalanx upgrade also able to reach those horsemen. And you see Viper's horsemen are now gone. VortiX has horsemen on the battlefield still. Archer numbers also seem to be favoring him, and I think he's got a big enough mass to potentially commit against that tower. Just run underneath it, start killing villagers at the bottom of the tower. Looks like Viper is pulling villagers to take down the battering ram. Response from VortiX will be just a focused fire on those villagers with the archers, and you see all the villagers of Viper are being pulled. Viper managed to get some forces into the eco of VortiX on the north, but VortiX responded to that. He pulled away all the villagers, so there is no one to be found over there. Whereas for Viper, he's losing a lot of villagers to those archers. So Viper's villager count is dropping to 62, VortiX at 91. And with that, VortiX now has a decisive eco lead. He's on the way to Castle Age. He can afford to take slightly disadvantageous engagements like that one underneath the tower. Viper is sending in some forces to try and get some raiding damage done on those berries. But I think you do have enough here for VortiX to potentially hold this off. Little scary for VortiX, but he can reinforce this battlefield rather easily, and he should have no trouble holding this, whereas for Viper, he has to sacrifice so many villagers to take down those battering rams. Looks like VortiX is getting forced back, but he's getting very close to Castle Age here. He's going to clean up the counterattack of Viper, and when the dust settles, we'll be looking into 91 villagers over 57. Both players still with 1,000 food in the bank, or 1,000 food per minute to work with, to be precise. Almost 1,000 food in the bank for VortiX, actually. He's up to Castle Age. This is going to be the last hurrah of Viper. Viper knows very well that he's never gonna get to Castle Age at this pace. And when the man-at-arms arrive, when Lancers arrive, that's not something that Viper has a response to. On the left side of the screen, you see Viper's queue, still just Archers, Horsemen. Right side, it is going to be men-at-arms, Horsemen being added by our red player, VortiX. He's very close to evening out this series. Viper is once again sending in the Archers and the Horsemen. Veteran Archer upgrade coming in right now for VortiX, as it looks like he still keeps losing villagers to those raids. The only thing that Viper could do to somehow turn this around would be to cut off VortiX from food. Because VortiX's berries are still quite exposed, so continuous raids like that could have a toll on the food eco of VortiX. Looks like with the man-at-arms appearing on the battlefield though, Horsemen potentially grabbing the second defense upgrade for VortiX, he is going to take a decisive advantage in these battles. Especially once he gets veteran horsemen with the second defense upgrade for their ranged armor. Those will be much better against the archers than the current ones. So this is going to get worse and worse for Viper. Military numbers are actually better for him, but the quality of the army is way better for VortiX. VortiX never really realized that all of those villagers were slain, so there is still some sloppiness over here. Did just lose 10 villagers out there, but his lead is so big that it's not even an important factor at this point, which sounds crazy, but that's the thing. The bigger thing, I would say, is that, as I said, his food eco depends on those berries. So he really needs to make sure that he maintains control over those, because so far he struggled to protect his berry wills. Looks like he's going to send some archers and men-at-arms over there. Viper still holding on to this position for the time being. Battering ram will be taken down by the villagers here. It might actually take down the mill, which would be a bit of an underwhelming loss over here for VortiX. And now here comes the cavalry. Viper keeps applying pressure here, and VortiX is struggling to protect his food eco. Horsemen are harassing the gold miners, horsemen are harassing the food villagers. And if you can slow down VortiX here, pin him inside or inside his base with some raids, this could give a window for Viper to get to Castle Age. He's almost depleting that boar on the left side though, and he doesn't have access to the northern boar right now. So one of the problems that Viper is also going to face is that he's soon running out of food himself. Both players will have trouble with the food eco, and it looks like VortiX will just wall his little corner in there. He's saying, okay, I need those berries. I also need that big gold mine out there. Looks like Viper is coming in with the spears, however, and the walls are still open, or are they? Yes, they are. So once again, the horseman and the spearmen squeeze themselves through that hole, and there is also a hole over there. More holes on these walls than on Swiss cheese right now for VortiX. He's getting ready to push Viper's base though with men-at-arms, so if he ever finds a window to clean up Viper's forces, he will still be in a good position. But guess what? Viper is getting up to Castle Age, and maybe, just maybe I have spoken too soon, because while VortiX was in Castle Age for quite a long time, he never really capitalized on that. And suddenly, Viper is on the way to Castle. It's still a long way to go for Viper, but you get the feel that now he feels the blood in the water. He knows very well that he might have an opportunity over here if he keeps raiding, and just keeps VortiX pinned inside his own base. Viper up to Castle Age. If he can secure some map control for himself, he could start picking up relics, and that could compensate for his eco deficit. He's also quite successful raiding, and he has been applying pressure on those gold mines, the food villagers for a long time. Now the man-at-arms arrived to his base, however, so it's going to be difficult to deal with. But you see, VortiX is going to struggle for food really badly. He has gotten his berry patches raided on the left side, the right side is depleted. So I would expect VortiX's food eco to just drop like crazy here in a matter of seconds. Whereas for Viper, he actually has some farming set up. No crossbows for him to deal with those man-at-arms just yet. He is only making the first couple of crossbows right now. He's going to clean up the man-at-arms, however. And if you look at the army numbers, those are dead even. Villager numbers, still better for VortiX, of course. But VortiX has a ton of idle time on him because one thing that Viper has is momentum. Viper has a ton of horsemen, now knights, that are just roaming the map, trying to pick off villagers left and right, and he so far has been quite successful doing that. Once again, man-at-arms are coming in here for VortiX. Crossbows will be able to take them down, and you see there is still some horsemen out here for Viper that could do some damage. Viper still got some berry villagers spread across the map here, but he already has a farming eco set up. You gotta wonder if VortiX has any kind of farming eco. Looks like once again Viper is going to find those lumberjacks, and you see the villager count isn't really going to grow in the favor of VortiX anymore. He's at 98 villagers, and he's dropping. Whereas for Viper, he's slowly building up his villager numbers. And I get the feel that Viper is crawling back into this game slowly but surely. Warrior Monk also on the battlefield for Viper. He currently has no relics under his control. Instead, he's just focusing on healing up his forces and using that Warrior Monk to buff the army, as those horsemen are still being annoying. And as you see, VortiX's food income has dropped quite a bit, so indeed, he's probably just now setting up that farming eco, potentially even going for a hunt, because the berries are now running dry. Horsemen jumping on those mangonels. VortiX was not expecting that, and that's a beautiful move from Viper over here. He jukes the first mangonel, he jukes the second one as well. Second mangonel taken down. That's huge value there for Viper. He lost like 2 or 3 cavalry units and 1 archer for the price of 2 mangonels. Looks like it's going to be now spearman additions by VortiX. He's realizing that he needs an answer to the cavalry, and as things stand, he still has the eco lead. But Viper is gaining more and more map control. And the key thing here for the Viper is that he's got the mobility advantage. And you see Viper's queue on the left side, he's adding some more knights, and even just 1 or 2 knights being sent to key resource locations, like this gold mine for example, or maybe even these locations, especially if there is an overchop on these wood lines, in particular this one or this one. Those could be great targets. Even just 1 knight could do so much damage over there. Viper grabbing the relics, capping the sacred sites, forcing his opponent to make a move. VortiX is trying to wall himself up. You see up north, he's dropping the palisades as we speak. And am I seeing Viper potentially going for a boar? I think he just killed the boar because he's up to 500 bounty, which puts him into tier 3 with the bounty level. I don't think he's gonna be able to safely access that boar with his villagers though. He might still risk it, simply because his opponent's army is slow moving. And this boar is sort of in the flank of the map. So it's very unlikely, or at least it's quite unlikely, that VortiX will be pushing in that direction. So you might actually get away with a boar being taken there for Viper up north. Forward castle now coming in for VortiX. This is gonna come down to one decisive fight potentially. VortiX fighting for this set over here. Losing the battle here could mean that he's losing this game, and that would push this set to a match point. Here comes the push. The castle is being placed as we speak. 75 army for VortiX, only 47 though for Viper. Viper is getting heavily outnumbered, and it seems like while the momentum looked good for Viper, now you see that economy advantage for VortiX showing on the battlefield when it comes to army numbers. Castle up now for the opposite player. He can start working towards getting the healing emplacement on it. As on the right side, Viper will have to pull off his lumberjacks for the time being. He has some resources to fall back to on the right side. Viper also capping some additional sacred sites. He's on 3 relics, which will help a lot to compensate for his villager deficit. And he's doing the right thing. He's trying to raid his way back into the game. But VortiX preemptively vault himself. And now this is making it very difficult for Viper to do any kind of raiding damage, unless there is an opening on that hill. I think there is an opening there. It's a little difficult to see, but yeah, there is an opening. There is an opening, and this could be a disaster for VortiX. He's breaking into the base of Viper, but guess what? There was an opening on that hill, and that's what I was referring to. 20 gold miners ready to be slaughtered on that gold mine, and that could be perfect retaliation for Viper. Looks like VortiX is going for the landmarks, however. He's going in for the Abbey of the Trinity right now. The Golden Gate and the Town Center is also nearby, so if Viper can somehow hold off VortiX's push, he's gonna be in a great spot because he's killing so many villagers from VortiX. On the other hand, though, he needs to hold off this push right here, right now. Most of the opponent's army is going to be spearmen and men-at-arms, so the archer crossbowman army could work nicely, but you need to deal with those mangonels first, and the springald numbers just seem to be too much to handle for Viper. VortiX got so many springolds out there. VortiX were doing so much damage on VortiX's eco, but the starting town center is now on fire. Mangonel's opening fire on those archers. That's going to be a beautiful hit by VortiX delivered on top of those archers, and Viper is just getting overrun. Viper knows that he needs to pull the villagers to take down the Mangonels. Mangonel's not set up, however, so VortiX will pull back for a brief moment. Town center is still under fire. But Viper struggling mightily to hold off those Mangonels. Mangonels got a beautiful shot on those archers, and now they're burning down the starting TC. Viper's gonna have one landmark left. It's now or never. Springald's little overextension over here by VortiX. Villagers being pulled by Viper. I think he's also dropping a castle up north, trying to hold off this assault. His opponent, however, can just go for the landmark. Mangonels once again opening fire, and those archers are slow clustered up here for Viper. It looks like the Mangonels are not focusing the archers, however. Villagers focusing down the Mangonels as we speak. Castle goes up, and I think VortiX now knows that he just needs to go for one landmark over there. The Golden Gate is exactly what separates Viper from defeat, and there is just no signs of Viper being able to keep that alive. That Golden Gate is now down to 50 HP, or 50% to be precise, and with that, the Golden Gate is being burned down. Viper is going to be out, and we're moving on to match point. What a comeback from VortiX so far. The key thing here for VortiX was that he was able to sort of contain that damage and pressure from Viper for quite a long time as he was building up his villager lead. And for some time, it actually looked very scary because Viper was able to harass him a lot. Viper was able to make sure that VortiX isn't able to build up a large army. Constant raids made it very difficult for VortiX to secure his perimeter. But ultimately, as the walls started to come up, it was more and more difficult for Viper to raid. And ultimately, VortiX was just able to build up a large army. Part of this, of course, is the Abbasid power. Being able to build the siege weapons on the battlefield is something that's very difficult for the Rus to deal with, because, of course, Viper needs the siege workshops to get any kind of siege going, whereas on the other side, for VortiX, he can just make them on the battlefield. So part of the reason why this was difficult for Viper to deal with is because the Abbasid player was just able to field way more siege than he could, so he had no chance of contesting those Mangonels. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Viper versus VortiX. This is game number 5 of this best of 5 here. Decider game between the two players. And we are going into a Mongols versus French matchup. Spawning on the southern part of the map is going to be VortiX playing as the French in red. And to the north, we will have Viper playing as the Mongols in blue. A civilization matchup that is going to be quite difficult for the French to play. Although we have seen in this tournament that both of these civilizations are capable of taking down the other. But one of the surprising strategies, or one of the surprising elements over here, is going to be how much pressure, of course, Viper is going to be applying on the French player, especially because we haven't seen a ton of super aggressive gameplay from Viper with the Mongols, so I'm curious to see how he's going to utilize this civilization. Mongols, by the way, having one of the worst win rates in the entire tournament, so that's an interesting element as well, partly because Mongols, of course, are very extensively used, so there's a large sample size on them, whereas let's say for Delhi, even though their win rate is high, part of that comes from the fact that it's always just banned, so the sample size is not so big, so you gotta wonder how representative that data is. To a certain extent, that's applicable for Chinese as well, for example. Chinese weren't really used that extensively, so even though it has a high win rate, the sample size is quite small. Meanwhile, for Mongols, it's being used in almost every set, and at some point, someone's gonna have to lose with Mongols, right? So that's one of the reasons why the Mongols don't have that spectacular win rate in this tournament. The map is Highview we are playing, which is going to mean that scouting and in general vision into those stealth forests will be key. And that is one of the reasons why Mongols is a popular civilization pick over here, because you're already relying on your towers for the YAM network, which means that if you just keep placing those, not only will you get the YAM network, you will also get vision and insight into those stealth forests, and that's going to be an extra factor to consider here for VortiX, or for Viper, excuse me. Meanwhile, looking at the base of VortiX over here, it looks like we're just seeing the POVs of the players, so we'll have to wait a tiny bit until we actually see the entire map so that we can talk about the map situation for the two players. We do have this gold mine quite exposed over here for VortiX. The bigger concern is that he doesn't really have good backup gold mines to work with. Both of those are on the right side of his base. So, generally speaking, his gold situation isn't going to be great, which is a little troublesome for the French, especially if the French want to go for a lot of knights at the beginning. We'll have to see if that's going to be the case. School of Cavalry coming in here, no surprise about that one. Whereas on the other side, Viper is doing double pasture opening, so this is not going to be a ton of early aggression. When you go for double pastures, you usually just go for either a strong eco feudal age and then start flooding out spearmen archers, or you are thinking about a fast castle. Now, going for a fast castle here would be very risky given the fact that the gold mine is not well protected. So I'm assuming that Viper is just going to build up a good food and food eco and then go for mass spearmen archers in feudal age. For now, he's got a good scouting all across the map, was able to secure quite a lot of sheep. He's operating with 2 scouts. I do think that VortiX is also using 2 scouts over here on this map, given the fact that there are so many stout forests, and of course the fact that you want to get some sheep as well for yourself. You usually play 2 scouts. This is something that Viper has done, and for VortiX, indeed, he's operating with 2 scouts as well. Now, Viper's got 2 scouts, which means that he could harass those gold miners, and he already has the Khan over there. Looks like VortiX, for a brief moment, is trying to pull a villager to kill the sheep that's trailing the Khan, but that's not going to happen. Viper was paying attention. You could see that VortiX tried to right-click that sheep, but that did not work out. Now, as I said, Viper could bring in his scouts as well, and cutting off the French player from gold could be extremely important, because not only is it a possibility for the French to go for knights, sometimes French want to go for professional scouts. So cutting off the French from gold is always a great accomplishment in feudal age. Scout of VortiX gets taken down by the town center of Viper, and it looks like we're going to have the Khan continuously keeping the shots at those gold miners. Meanwhile, on the right side, Viper is bringing in the scouts grouped together. Where did those scouts go? Where are the scouts of Viper? One of them is in the middle of the map. I would have thought that he's going to apply some more pressure with them, but it looks like I was wrong. School of Cavalry just now finishing for VortiX over here. Whereas for Viper, he delayed that Deerstones quite a bit. Now, looking at his gold bank right now, it seems like a very distant idea to just go for fast castle. So as I said, I'm suspecting to have a lot of feudal age pressure over here by Viper, because his food eco is going to be great. He has been set up with 2 pastures affected by the Ovu for a long time. So his food eco is absolutely supreme. You see, there is quite a lot of sheep underneath the town center. He's still mining gold with just 1 villager here, so it is indeed going to be a ton of feudal age pressure, and we could see horseman spearman being the unit composition here. That's a composition that's difficult to deal with for the French, especially if the French are going for the knights and archers. And indeed, it's going to be knights and archers from our red player, VortiX. He's coming in with those as we speak. Viper is going to send the Khan forward to see what's up. He's going to spot the first knight coming forward, and his response is likely going to be popping out the first couple of spearmen in a matter of seconds. Stable being dropped right now for Viper. One of the advantages that he's getting with this spearman plus horseman composition is that it's not something that costs a ton of stone, which means that he can use the double training for quite a long time. You will see that he's able to afford double spearman quite easily for quite a long time. Looks like the knight is going to target the gold miners first. Spearmen are there to defend, so there is no problem over there. Looks like Viper might actually lose a villager here. VortiX trying to swing that sword, and indeed he does get a villager kill. He got a charge in, and now he gets a sword hit in, and that's going to be 1 villager down from Viper. And now VortiX will disengage. This is exactly how VortiX has to play this one. Keep being annoying with those knights, poke away at the villagers, try to get 1 or 2 villager kills out there, and it looks like the Deerstones for Viper will be moved. So this way, his spearman close to that gold mine will be affected by the YAM network, although he's dropping a tower there as well, so it's going to be a little redundant. And it looks like we're seeing a barracks being placed by VortiX. So he's realizing that, okay, as we know, the archer plus knights composition is going to struggle against mass spearman, mass horsemen. So one thing that he could do is add a couple of spears himself, because that would be immensely helpful against Viper's cavalry. For now, Viper is adding the first couple of horsemen, still having a good food eco thanks to the pastures. And this is a good setup here for the Mongols. And the reason why this is a good setup for the Mongols is because their economy in feudal age is a lot more efficient than the French economy, especially with those pastures going on. That's the third one that's placed by Viper. So with those pastures going on, it is going to be a very efficient economy for Viper. And of course, he's got the cheap unit composition here. He's able to spam those spears and horsemen out quite easily from the double training with the barracks and the stable. And because of that, the key thing here for Viper is that he should be able to beat his opponent to Castle Age here. It would be very surprising to see the French player getting to Castle Age faster here. And this is the tricky setup here for VortiX. His opponent should be able to beat him to Castle Age quite easily. For now, VortiX is regrouping back at home. And for Viper, he's building up his horsemen and spearmen numbers. 13 versus 14 is the army count. But the moment Viper stops making army, he's just going to skyrocket in terms of resource bank. For now, looks like he's mining gold with a couple of villagers. There is no eco upgrades coming in for him. No blacksmith upgrades either, as it looks like now the archers and knights are crawling forward for VortiX. Melee attack upgrade in for VortiX. He has just finished up with the blacksmith and now he's going for siege engineering. So VortiX wants to push this one in feudal age, and that's the window that he needs to utilize. He's realizing that his opponent is likely going to beat him to Castle Age, so might as well try to make a push in feudal. That's a nice counterattack by Viper, picks off one villager, and he's targeting the second one, gets the second villager kill as well. Now jumps on the lumberjacks, and the spearmen are nowhere to be found right now by VortiX. Looks like he isn't going to get any more villager kills, but that was a very nice raid from Viper. He was able to compensate for that previous villager loss. Still, of course, VortiX has the villager lead thanks to the fact that he's playing French. But aside from that, Viper was able to accomplish quite a lot with that horseman raid. And this will force VortiX to keep some spearmen back at home, because Viper will come back with those horsemen at some point. You see he's hiding them in the stealth forest to the left of VortiX's base. VortiX now launching an assault close to the base of Viper here. Viper's got the Yam speed network affecting his army here, so it's going to be quite easy for him to maneuver those forces. And this is something that VortiX sees, and he's going to call off his forces for the time being. First battering ram on the way for our red player VortiX. He's ready to push those deer stones, ready to push the gold mine. He knows very well that if he wants to avoid the Mongol player beating him to Castle Age, one way to do that would be to cut him off from gold. Viper's got pretty good numbers over here though. He's got some archers, he's got some spearmen, and it looks like he's now trying to focus down the spears behind. Good fight over here for VortiX, however. His spearmen are still alive. They're able to get a kill on one of those horsemen, and this is a great fight here for VortiX until the cavalry shows up from Viper. He sent those horsemen all the way back from the base of VortiX, and now he's getting a beautiful surround on the archers. That's a perfect massacre because there is just one spearman left over here for VortiX. That spearman is doing work, however, and new spearmen appear on the battlefield. Suddenly, VortiX is looking healthier than ever, or is he? Both sides are losing quite a lot of units over here in this battle, and in the end, it just seems to be an even trade between the two. The key fact was that VortiX's spearmen were alive for so long, so they were able to take down quite a lot of cavalry from Viper. But behind this one, of course, most of the army from VortiX was archers, and those were taken down quite easily by the horsemen. Looks like the assault at the end is going to be repelled, which is definitely a big win for Viper over here, but Viper himself also lost significant numbers. Battering ram is going to get taken down, tower set on fire. Viper should be able to repair this one, but while Viper is addressing that issue, he's also taking the fight in the middle. Looks like the tower gets taken down, so at least there is some value for VortiX coming out of that battering ram, even though not spectacular. And it looks like VortiX is mining stone like crazy. He's got a ton of wood in the bank, and he's realizing that this could be a long game. So he's thinking about adding a second town center. Viper now with the mobility advantage, he's going to roam the map with a couple of horsemen. Still has a good food eco thanks to the pastures, and now we're seeing some eco upgrades come in for him. He's realizing that his opponent is no longer pushing him, so this is the window to grab some eco upgrades. He's coming in with the food upgrade and wheelbarrow as well. Whereas on the other side, VortiX was prioritizing the blacksmith upgrades. You see, he's got ranged attack and melee attack as upgrades, but no eco upgrades for him just yet. Horseman poking away at the gold mine of VortiX. For now, this is not really threatening. And Viper is going to distribute his scouts along the base of the opponent. And it looks like we do have... What is this? Another big battle coming in here. Where did this come from? Is this a rewind? Yeah, this seems to be a rewind over here. This is the first time we're actually seeing a rewind in the middle of a game here. So it looks like we have some calm times. This was the rewind of the battle, and you see the key thing was that Viper was able to bring back the cavalry, and that cavalry coming from the back is not something that VortiX accounted for, and that is going to allow Viper to surround this force, but there is still some red spearmen in that group, and those red spearmen were able to take down the majority of those horsemen. Hence, we had a rather even battle at the end. No major engagements for the last 1 or 2 minutes over here, as VortiX is settling in for a long game, dropped the second Townsender. He already has a 6 soldiers lead, and you get the feel that now Viper could have that sense of urgency kick in, because he can't really let his opponent to just boom up. But here it is, he's going for Castle Age. As expected, the Mongol player is going to beat the French player into Castle. The Khan also gets picked off by the archers, but Viper is gonna be on the way to Castle Age. The question is, what's the unit that you're going for? Viper already has a stable, so you could think about Lancers. If he goes for Men-at-Arms, he needs to respect the fact that if VortiX gets to Castle Age himself, he's gonna be able to respond to that very easily with Arbalettrier. Of course, the Arbalettrier would also pick off the Knights, but it would be a little easier for Viper to just avoid all those Arbalettrier with the mobility of those Lancers. Viper still has some leftover horsemen over here. He will try to pick off 1 or 2 villagers with those. Step right out on the way for Viper. And the thing is for VortiX that he's still very far away from Castle Age. Especially the concerning part for him is that he's setting up a food eco right now and farming, which means that the return value is yet to come from it. And this means that his food eco isn't spectacular right now. You see it's 500 per minute-ish, which means that he's going to need to wait potentially 2 minutes, even 3, if he wants to get to Castle Age. That's a lot of time. Viper could easily get like 10, 15, 20 Men-at-Arms out in 3 minutes time. And that's the big problem for VortiX right now. He ran out of food at the worst possible moment, because this is when he needs the food the most. There are some hunts over here, but both of those are exposed, so you can't really use this hunt. You might be able to get away with this hunt, but given the fact that Viper's got the mobility on those horsemen, it's going to be quite risky for VortiX to send out villagers towards those hunts, and because he's just now setting up his farming eco, he's gonna have to wait a lot for Castle Age. I wonder if he's going to just try and pin his opponent inside his base, because that's what you probably want to do here. Use your knights and just keep raiding Viper, force him to stay back at home. It looks like now VortiX makes a decision. He's realizing that he needs that food. He's going to drop a mill close to those hunts. He needs a defensive tower over here as well, potentially 2. Because Viper is going to come in with Castle Age units, and VortiX's Feudal Age army won't be able to fight that. It's fairly obvious that VortiX's army isn't going to be capable of fighting off a Castle Age army, so you need to have some sort of extra firepower like defensive towers, or simply just shelter for your villagers. Looks like instead Viper is adding a Mangonel, and you see that VortiX has no insight into that Stealth Forest. He's completely blind here. He might have his scout finding that operation from Viper, and indeed the spearmen now pop out of the shadows. Mangonel coming out as well, unleashing a volley on the villagers, and this is not a fight that VortiX was expecting. He's gonna have to jump on that Mangonel with the spearman. Mangonel gets a nice hit on the archers. Second volley of torches coming in on the Mangonel. Looks like the Mangonel does not get his own volley out, and this is actually a good fight for VortiX here. He's pushing in with the archers, picking off most of the spears. Men-at-Arms are now appearing on the battlefield, but with no more spearmen available for Viper, the knights are pushing him back. And VortiX, now up to 1,000 food per minute, this will be his window to pile up the resources for Castle Age, and if he gets to Castle, he's going to be in a great position, because the biggest problem for the French against the Mongols is getting to Castle Age. Usually the Mongols beat you to Castle, and then use that as advantage to just finish off the game. If VortiX is able to slow down Viper over here, which, to be honest, he already did, because Viper is down to 5 army, he could get up to Castle Age himself. He's going for a market right now, he's going to sell some of his wood. And if he can get to Castle Age, he's gonna have the Veteran Royal Knights, and most importantly, the technologies will be once again even. Viper, of course, has a step reduct, so despite the fact that he's at 51 villagers as compared to 69, very nice from VortiX, he's of course going to be able to compensate for it a tiny bit. No relics being picked up by Viper so far, instead he's crawling up with towers. It's very possible that we're going to see some Spring Golden placements being placed on them. Meanwhile for VortiX, he's still piling up resources for Castle, but he's still very far away from that, and that's getting alarming. Viper is fully aware of that hunting operation, and he knows very well that his opponent is relying on that food quite a bit, so that's the angle that he needs to push. Men-at-Arms are coming in from the right side. Khan is also being sent in to harass the gold miners, so it's all about that distraction and then allowing the Khan to pick off 1 or 2 villagers. Or if your opponent is addressing the Khan situation, you can just go for the hunters, and that's exactly what we're seeing over here. But there's a counterattack here by VortiX, and this was not expected by Viper. All the Knights of VortiX are now rampaging the eco of the Snake, and this is going to be difficult to clean up for Viper because he's got no forces back at home. Knights are now focusing down the tower instead of the villagers, so this gives a bit of a time for Viper to get some spearmen going, but you see, at this point those Knights are throwaway units for VortiX. He knows very well that he's going to lose them, but he wants to make sure he maximizes the damage that they can cause in Viper's eco, because it's all about slowing down Viper to a point where VortiX is able to catch up in terms of castlage timing. And looking at the resources of VortiX, he's getting very close. He's going to probably age up with the Guildhall, although in this scenario you could probably justify the alternative landmark, the Royal Institute, as well. But I would think it's gonna be the Guildhall for VortiX for the time being. Viper's army numbers rising once again. He's back to 17. He lost a couple of villagers back at home though, so if his opponent gets to Castle Age and he's able to get a reasonable army out, Viper's gonna be in a tough spot because Viper's eco is nowhere close to his opponent's one. Viper assembling more siege weapons on the battlefield. He's ready to push this one. Castle Age on the way for VortiX. He's going up with the Guildhall, I presume. He's building it all the way at the back of his base. He knows very well that the push might be imminent, so he needs to spread out his landmarks as much as possible. Make sure that it's very difficult for Viper to kill all 3 of those. It's all the way at the back. Yeah, there it is. There's the Guildhall. And with that, we're going to have Castle Age in for VortiX. Viper now knows that he's gonna have to make a push soon, because if VortiX gets his Castle Age upgrades, he could be in trouble. And here come the Mangonels. The moment Viper sees that VortiX is in castle, he knows he has to push this one, and that's exactly what's happening. Lancers are flanking on the right side for Viper. He could have picked off gold miners if there were any on that gold mine. Looks like now the Mangonels are shelling the barracks over here. And one of the problems that VortiX could face is access to gold, actually. Because that gold mine at the front is almost depleted, villagers also forced away, and we talked about this one. The backup gold mines are absolutely horrendous for VortiX. This is where both the backup gold mines are, and now you see the Mangonels opening up against those farms over here, doing quite a lot of damage. Now starting to shell the starting town center here. 3 Mangonels for the Viper. His Khan gets some arrows into his body from the town center. How long can VortiX hold out, especially without gold? That's the big problem for VortiX right now. He has the Guildhall, he has the market to get some gold for himself, but how sustainable that is, that's a big question. He has the veteran Knights out, and Viper is going to find those gold miners. That is a great find for Viper, and that's going to cut off his opponent from gold. And there's a traction trebuchet being built right now by Viper. He's amping up the pressure, he's taking down a lot of the farming eco, and this is match point here. If Viper wins this one, this is going to be his only win in the tournament. Villagers are now being pulled. Here comes the big push by VortiX. He wants to snap down those Mangonels. Villagers get a direct hit on top of their heads with the Mangonels. So many villagers will be sacrificed over here. Mangonels getting some beautiful hits on the archers as well. Knights and villagers trying to focus down the Mangonels. The trebuchet gets taken down, but the archers getting wiped out by all of those Mangonels. And with that, so many archers going down here for VortiX, and the spearmen are still standing strong for Viper. The spearmen should be enough to repel all those knights. So many villager casualties as well from VortiX here. At best, this is an even fight, but it's likely something that favors Viper a lot more. Archers can't really focus down the spearmen because there are some men-at-arms mixed in, and they're right now focusing the men-at-arms. Towers are being crept up with by Viper, and it looks like most of the forces here for VortiX are getting wiped out. Viper's number is also heavily decimated, but of course, Viper is the aggressor right now. Viper is the one pushing the eco of VortiX. Villager count still in the favor of VortiX, 69 to 58, but Viper was able to gain a lot of ground over here and quite heavily damage the opponent's eco and army as well. Sneaky tower coming up on the left side for Viper, and let's not underestimate the importance of those. Being able to sneak up 1 or 2 towers on the opponent like this could be immensely valuable, because he might not even notice that he's losing villagers left and right. Looks like the Knights might find the villagers building the tower in that stealth forest. Down south, however, there's a second tower coming up, and indeed, knights are being pulled, villagers are being pulled to burn down towers. They actually went for the other tower, only to find two villagers building a new tower out there. That tower is not going up for ViPer, and VortiX will be able to take down the other one as well. VortiX still possesses a fairly considerable villager lead, which is not to be overlooked. However, his army composition right now isn't looking spectacular. 85 population for VortiX, 74 for ViPer here. Meanwhile, on the right side, you see some men-at-arms hitting that gold mine. ViPer knows fully well that he needs to starve his opponent out of gold. VortiX probably has the landmark, the guild hall, set on gold, so he's gonna have some buffer to work with. But of course, he's gonna have to access some mineable gold at some point. One thing he could do is try to get a castle up on one of those. He could start mining stone, get some army going, and he just needs a small window to get a castle up on one of those gold mines. That could be a thing to do. Looks like he's sending over just one knight for the time being to get some raiding damage done. Mining camps being burnt down also helps ViPer, of course. He's going to get some raiding bounty from those. And it looks like the knight has just arrived to ViPer's base. Spearman is there to retaliate. ViPer's gonna have two defensive towers. So the knight isn't going to be able to do much here. And there's the sneaky tower that I was referring to. Spring Golden placement being placed on it. But it's going to be cleaned up by the villagers before the Spring Golden placement comes in. So is the wolf attacking the tower? Or is it attacking the villager inside? I wonder if the wolf can actually attack a villager inside a tower. It shouldn't be able to, but you never know. We have seen some crazy bugs in this game, because it would be somewhat surprising to see the wolf attacking the tower itself. Khan still poking away at that gold mine, and you see ViPer wants to take a tower up there. That's going to be a very juicy tower because it denies a berry patch, it denies gold, and it's also harassing a potential forest out there. And it's also a good staging ground to attack the other gold mine. ViPer is still limiting the access of his opponent to quite a bit of an amount of key resources. Another tower being crept up by ViPer, so he's trying to limit the access to wood as well, not only gold. And as you see, VortiX is struggling to access gold over here. He's got the villager lead by 12. But he isn't able to access resources at this point. He was forced away from that gold mine. Now he's going to be forced away from forests. And many of those villagers are heavily damaged. So tower fire could wipe them out quite easily. New barracks are being placed as we speak. It looks like we're going to have some men-at-arms here for VortiX. But crossbows could already be in the making here for ViPer. For now, it seems like ViPer is only making spears and men-at-arms. Tower, once again up for ViPer, will be destroyed. Or at least potentially destroyed by those knights at the south. And a new traction trebuchet is being built. I wonder if ViPer wants to push directly into the opponent's base again. Neither of the players started picking up relics just yet, and ViPer is very resilient, keeping those towers up in the face of the opponent. Now the berry villagers are getting harassed as well. And because ViPer is shelling the town center as well, this might be something that wasn't even noticed by VortiX. Yeah, he's not noticing those men-at-arms killing his villagers. He's focusing elsewhere, and that's going to be a ton of villagers going down. ViPer is at 76 villagers, his opponent 84, and ViPer is on 2 town centers. ViPer is taking over this game, and now every single bit of momentum is on his side. Mangano is opening up once again. Looks like the army of VortiX will take down the initial tower, but ViPer is realizing that there is a window to just push this entire farming eco, and this is a very juicy pickup. Arbaletry is switching to the right side. Mangonels could be set up. I don't think that the Arbaletry saw the Mangonels there. The first volley comes out. They juke the shots. Second volley could come out as well. Villagers being pulled to take down the Mangonels. Mangonel takes a shot on the villagers but misses the target, and with that, the Mangonels are taken down. Arbaletry should be able to deal with most of those men-at-arms, so ViPer's army, at least for the time being, is getting repelled. One trebuchet is still out there, but that could also be taken down by the villagers, and villagers are being used more and more by VortiX as combat units, simply because he cannot access resources. Might as well use that as army. He's trying to use them as torch units, burning down siege weapons, and they might be able to do that. He's going for the trebuchet out there, but that means that the Mangonel is able to set up. The Mangonel got some rocks out there, and I think all of those villagers might be wiped out. Our observer switched away from that screen, but I think with the Mangonel getting those rocks out from such a close distance, yeah, there's the pile of dead bodies. That was at least 15 villagers getting wiped out from VortiX from that Mangonel. That was a beautiful shot. And now, look at the villager count. VortiX is down to 64, and he's struggling to access resources. This could be ViPer's victory here. ViPer's first set victory in N4C, the only set victory that he's going to get. Mangonel creeping up on those villagers, and that is a fiesta out there. Villagers are going to be pulled to take it down. Many of the villagers were damaged but not killed. So with that, ViPer will lose the Mangonel. But the next wave of raids coming in here from ViPer could do so much damage on those vills. VortiX is still holding this one, and ViPer is struggling mightily finishing off the game right now, but he's just everywhere. He's slowly grinding down VortiX, so despite the fact that VortiX does have the better army right now, all those towers all across the map, the fact that VortiX is pinned inside his own base, those are elements of the game that are just so annoying right now for VortiX to deal with. ViPer once again assembling a force to push this one. He's still heavy on the mangonels department. I really feel like what ViPer could do is get some horsemen going. Because if you think about that, his opponent is mostly operating with Arbaletier, and the key reason why ViPer isn't able to push that much more is because ViPer's mangonels are being sniped down by villagers. But his opponent is maybe, or well, not maybe, but mostly Arbaletier and men-at-arms, which means that the horsemen would work quite nicely, and you just want to start raiding here at this point. The mobility is not so great for VortiX's army, which means that you can just run circles around the base of VortiX, keep killing villagers, and slowly grind him down. Khan is doing quite a decent amount of damage over here, as it looks like the infantry will charge in on the mangonels. Mangonel gets one volley out, nice juke from our red player VortiX. He's gonna be able to jump on the mangonels, takes down one mangonel, the second mangonel is getting a volley out here on the Arbaletier. Nice juke once again by VortiX, beautiful micro by him, and he's going to take down the mangonel as well. That's a great fight for him. He is constantly taking down all of those knights and men-at-arms that are coming in. But ViPer's unit flood seems to be a lot more consistent than the unit production of VortiX here. VortiX needs some reinforcements to this battlefield. Down south, you still have some towers up on the base of VortiX. ViPer is struggling so much to close this game out. He has been playing from an advantageous position for a long time, and he's doing the right things, but VortiX is doing such a good job defending. Really, ViPer is doing everything right at this point. It's just the fact that VortiX is doing such a great job holding off these assaults. Great micro sniping down ViPer's siege weapons. ViPer added a ton of stables, so I'm suspecting that we could see some cavalry arrive. Looks like it's just going to be lancers for the time being, and it looks like ViPer once again tried to sneak up a tower on the opponent here. This one is going to be repelled by the riot of the villagers. Some lancers now moving in here for ViPer. Villagers will once again take down this tower. ViPer will send in the Khan as well to assist that tower, and he might even send in some lancers to try and get some villager kills. Looks like VortiX isn't going to bother killing that villager. He's just going to call off his villagers for the time being. 75 vills for VortiX. ViPer's at 102. ViPer also has the ultimate map control, keep that in mind. He's got all the golds across the map, he's got the hunts, he's got the berries. The only thing that ViPer did not do is pick up relics, but I guess he's too busy microing his forces right now, harassing the enemy with the Khan, and you see it's getting more and more difficult for VortiX to access any resources. He's now chopping those trees closer and closer to the enemies. New tower once again being built on the right side by ViPer. ViPer is slowly but surely grinding down his enemy. It's a very slow progress for ViPer, but it's a steady and consistent progress. Once again, knights here from our red player VortiX jumping on the mangonel. They will be able to finish off the mangonel, so that siege weapon is also going down the drain here for ViPer. New mangonel is up for him, and the Arbaletier currently have no support from men-at-arms or from cavalry to take down that mangonel. And ViPer, having that tower up there, that's going to start picking away at those villagers from VortiX. Mangonel now setting up. Takes a volley out. Looks like the Arbaletier will retreat for the time being. Villagers once again pink bolted on the right side. So many battles going on each side, and really, no one is winning those battles decisively. It's just one slow and painful grind. VortiX once again was forced to pull villagers to take down that mangonel, and that he is going to succeed in, I do believe, although the villagers are getting picked apart. Mangonel, still alive, gets a volley out on the Arbaletier. Mangonel gets taken down in the end, but of course, that resulted in VortiX losing quite a lot of villagers. And now VortiX is down to 18 army, ViPer's at 26. Lancers and Horsemen now appear on the battlefield, and those are going to be beefy units, able to soak up so much arrow fire. And I think the ice might be broken now. ViPer is sending in the army into the opponent's base, and for the first time in the last 15-20 minutes, he's actually able to inflict a lot of damage at the heart of VortiX's economy. He's coming in with the cavalry, he's realizing that ViPer is going to have the momentum, and at this point, he has the chance to start killing villagers left and right. The Arbaletier are still standing strong, picking off most of those lancers. That's why the ViPer needs some more horsemen to work with. But now, there's a lot of idle time on VortiX's eco, and ViPer is assembling the next wave. It's a really slow and grindy game here. VortiX pinned inside his own base. He's doing a great job defending, but he's not getting closer to victory by any means. In fact, ViPer is slowly grinding him down. I wonder how much resources or how much gold VortiX has in that guild hall, because VortiX has no mineable gold left. You can see that on the resource income. In fact, he doesn't even have a lot of wood to work with. So he's down to 75 wood per minute, 0 gold per minute, 0 stone per minute. And that's going to make his life much more difficult. Viper, of course, capitalizing on that map control. He's taking the berries, he's taking the hunts, and now Viper is picking up the relics as well. Viper could have started capturing sacred sites for some time, and that could have helped immensely, making sure that, you know, VortiX is sort of on a timer. Because Viper is trying to grind down his opponent. In reality, Viper could have just sit back and capture the sacred sites. Now, Viper, of course, is a player that loves to win with a conquest victory, so he's not going to just turtle up, defend the sacred sites. He wants to defeat his opponent, and he knows he can do it. Villagers once again being pulled on the mangonels. Mangonels should be taken out rather easily over here. There's absolutely no defense from Viper to protect those mangonels with. The mangonels do get some farms being burnt down, but that's basically all that they could accomplish. On the right side, you're seeing Voz come up for VortiX. He's trying to protect that gold mine, but Viper knows about that, and he's going to send in the horsemen to deal with that. In the middle of VortiX's eco, he's trying to hold on to this one. But Viper is just grinding him down more and more. Such a long, lengthy, and grindy game here. For VortiX, his food eco is still operational, although it has taken a beating. If you look at his food income per minute, 600-ish food per minute right now, and it looks like VortiX is tapping out of this one. Or is he? On the face cam, you could see just moving up his fingers a tiny bit, but there it is indeed. He's tapping out of this. He's realizing that he's going nowhere in this one. Slowly but surely, Viper is grinding him down, and with that, Viper is going to win one set in N4C. He's still going to be, I think, the last player in the Swiss stage because he lost the first 4 sets, but Viper at least fighting for his pride. And I think he can be a little disappointed that he didn't play as good in the previous days as he did today, because today's Viper was much stronger than the previous day's Viper. So this is actually putting Viper into a slightly better light, because obviously there was a lot of controversy regarding him being invited and then being 0-4. So he definitely redeemed himself to a certain extent. It's quite a shame that he wasn't able to play this convincingly in the previous days, because his sets would have been a lot more competitive if he played the way he did today. Meanwhile, for VortiX, as we discussed, the stakes weren't super high for this set. He knew very well that he has pretty much a guaranteed spot in the playoffs, so he wasn't going 100% into this one, especially in game number 1 and 2. Those were quite sloppy games here for VortiX. Game number 3, 4, and 5, those were much better from him, and he made the life of Viper very difficult in here. But in the end, Viper closes the set with a 3-2 scoreline. And with that, he's ending the tournament with a 1-4 record in the Swiss stage. Whereas for VortiX, he falls down to 2-3. That's going to put him at the middle parts of the Swiss bracket. He was basically fighting for a seeding position over here in the playoffs. He is going to have a spot in the quarterfinals. Whereas for Viper, he's done with N4C. At least he's walking out with style, having a good set being played over here, good performance, and a final victory over here. In the end, he's going to finish N4C with a 1-4 record.